he is startled. The entire room is painted with red scriptures. He wonders who could have written all that while he was asleep. However, strangely, the letters begin to disappear. He then thinks he must have been hallucinating because he just woke up. Weird how realistic it seemed. But then he looks to the side and notices. The room he is in is not his room. Getting up, he wonders what kind of place this is. The instant noodles he ate and the 2 tissues he threw on the floor are no longer there. Obviously, he gets confused and starts to freak out. He seems to receive memories from another life of someone who is identical to him. Moreover, both are orphans, but they followed different paths. Our protagonist studied all his life and got into an amazing university. But the guy whose body he took over dropped out of school and had a horrible job. Looking at his trembling hand, he wonders if he is in some other world. And what was the relation of those words written in blood on the ceiling? In the memories of the original owner of this body, there's nothing about that. He stands there trying to understand the situation, when someone calls him husband and says it's time for breakfast. When he turns around, he sees a woman with large curves. Looking at her thighs, he wonders what this husband thing is about. In his parallel world, did he get married so early? She sits on the bed and tells him to get up, it's getting late. Now the rascal already thinks that the transmigration wasn't so bad. He swallows hard, thinking that if it weren't for this transmigration, he would never have such a beautiful and kind woman. She keeps calling him to have breakfast. He doesn't know whether to call her baby, wife, or darling. He then decides to delve into the memories to find her name, so it would be easier. He starts thinking and strangely finds nothing. His mind seems to split. No name, no experiences, no hobbies, no favorite position, nothing. There is absolutely nothing about her in his memory. He looks back hesitantly, realizing she is standing still, and he already knows this so-called wife is strange. A fly lands on her eye. Hesitant, he asks who she is. She stands still for a second. She then says that it seems he can see, already opening a monstrous mouth. Sweet and cold, the protagonist says that he is just a little confused, he will think about it properly. But now she has already turned into a giant creature saying that he can see. He cries for a second, but in the next, he is devoured. Suddenly, he wakes up in bed again, sweating cold and wondering what happened. He looks up, certain that everything was a dream, only to see the words in blood once again there. He can't read them, the things disappear, and he thinks there might have been some kind of clue there. Staring at his own hand, he thinks he will have to pretend to be blind. But putting his hand on his head, he knows. In the memories of the owner of this body, he wasn't blind, so it makes no sense. He's a guy who always lived alone and never saw or heard anything out of the ordinary. That means he can't let this woman know that he can see her. For now, he will have to pretend she doesn't exist. A hand comes through the door and calls him, saying he just woke up and it's time for breakfast. Seductively, she approaches while he thinks he will have to ignore and see how the former owner lived. She places the Dragon Balls in play and asks if he is awake. Sweet and cold, he knows he can't move and can't see, or else he will die. But suddenly she turns her neck and approaches him, while he insists to himself that he can't show any reaction. But she keeps getting closer and suddenly her tongue comes out of her mouth. As it touches his face, he shows a reaction, and then she knows he can see. His face begins to be consumed by a curse, and suddenly he explodes. In the next second, he opens his eyes and gets up startled again. But now he is angry at that damn woman. The poor guy wakes up sweating cold and tries to stop to reason and starts to wonder. Is he being resurrected, or is this a time loop? Apparently it's like when you save a point in a game. He grabs his phone knowing she wanted to force him to show a reaction. He puts on TikTok videos of dancing e-girls to pretend he's distracted. When once again she appears behind him and says it's time for breakfast. She calls for her husband and asks why he is looking at other women like that in front of her. He starts talking to himself, saying that he loves that girl from the live stream. Meanwhile, his wife asks if he doesn't like her anymore. She approaches and says she knows he doesn't have a vision problem. So why is the phone so close? Is he seeing her by any chance? He goes back to fiddling with his phone, wondering if he can't even seem strange. However, he calms down a bit since she didn't show a reaction. He then goes back to looking for other live streams. But then he gets a scare. She appears live streaming on his phone. He stands up and throws the phone on the bed, scared. As he trembles a bit, she behind him says he can see. She opens her monstrous mouth to eat him, but now he comes to throw a punch. But she dodges, and then there's nothing he can do. A bite to the arm, he agonizes and dies once again. While she feeds on the pieces, he wonders if that is really his remains. And with that, he starts losing consciousness again. Once more, she says it's time for breakfast, and she approaches, startling him. Up to the 6th time he resurrected, he still got scared just by her getting close to his face, and he died multiple times because he couldn't act very well. On the 8th time, he tried to escape from that room, but there was no way, and she realized that she could be seen. So he concluded that he should pretend to like her since there was no escape. As soon as she came to get breakfast, he said she was amazing. His plan was to take advantage of that as much as possible. But in the end, he went hungry, and she ate everything. And so he died 13 times in a row while trying to find some way to calm down. Some people who go insane become very sane. But for him, death kept coming. It reached 14, 15, 16. And with each death, he received new memories of the owner of that body. He started to understand a bit about that world and how different it was from his world. This is a place full of bizarre tales. On the 18th death, he wondered why he was reliving. Who wrote those words in blood, and why did they disappear as soon as he looked at them? Once again, he opens his eyes, wondering who is responsible for all this. He doesn't know who it is, but he knows his wife is one of them. She is a monster, and he began to repeat to himself that she should die because he deserved to live. Once again, she came through the door, calling him husband and saying it was time for breakfast. He got up knowing that every time she comes to do this, but never forces physical contact. Standing in the door, she asked if he wanted to start the day by eating some hot, moist meat. He got extremely close, but he walked right through as expected. She can only do something where she is sure he can see. He went to prepare some food while she, desperate at his side, said she already made breakfast and was ready for him. The poor guy sighed, thinking that the more beautiful, the better the lie. She's saying it's ready, but clearly there's nothing prepared. He made his snack, knowing that only by leaving that room would he find something about his wife. When he went to bite the snack, she had transformed into the floor, asking if he was seeing anything. He went to the door to open it, knowing he needed to get out of there, and she was visible on the doorknob, asking where he was going and why he wouldn't stay home with her. But he just opened the door and left the room, saying to himself that no one kills him 18 times and gets away with it. Now he wants revenge. As soon as he finds a way to eliminate her, he will come back here. But as soon as he opens the apartment door, he gets a scare looking at the sky. The world is red and filled with deformed creatures. In front of him, only the silhouettes of people. He gets scared by that and starts laughing like a psychopath, saying that this world is really interesting. But he feels something strange and vomits on the sidewalk. Suddenly, someone appears, asking if the uncle is okay. He looks startled, and it's just a little girl wanting to know if he's sick. He tells her he's fine and she can call him Big Brother. Patting her head, he thinks she's so cute that he would love to have a daughter. But she becomes deformed instantly, saying he can see. His heart stops, and he looks up. The girl turned into a giant demon with a blade. Our protagonist is at a loss for words and then starts laughing loudly, saying that this world is very, very interesting. He likes it and tells her that he really likes this appearance, because that way, when he kills her, he won't feel any guilt. He will end all the weirdos in this place without any remorse. But this time, he was torn to pieces. Once again, he wakes up in bed with the balloon wife asking if her husband is okay. The sun is already rising. The poor guy thinks that having breakfast 20 times in one day is really tiring. Sometime later, he is sitting on a park bench. Once again, the little girl comes and asks where her mother is, can he take her home? While he is thinking about the madness and all the kinds of strangeness in this place. One type is the completely strange and irrational ones. They are aggressive but can't affect anything, like air. The other type is the creatures that are identical to humans. They do nothing but try to get close to you. But as soon as they get a reaction, they make their move. Exactly like that wife. He knows that no normal person in that world can perceive their existence, but even so, they cling to them. Why do they want that? He thinks that maybe these creatures want to integrate into human life. Sometime later, he is holding his phone and received a payment of 3 cents. To survive in this world, at least he will need a bit of money to discover the things he needs. In the work group, a guy named Wudai is calling for him. The name of our protagonist is Yizui Fangxiu. He works selling apartments for a company and knows he hasn't received the commission for one he sold recently. So he sends a message saying he is going to settle that, and he speeds up on his bike. When he gets there, strangely, there's a hospital instead of the company's building. The place looks more like an abandoned building. He stands sweating cold at the door, wondering if this is the sales place. He reaches the door and his phone rings. He says he is coming up and asks if everyone is in the office. The people say yes, that the owner's son tried calling him several times, but he didn't answer. The protagonist says that's fine, then he will come up. Our boy realizes that this place is definitely affected by reality, but the people on the call didn't seem to be doing badly. He finds it strange, but also interesting. Walking down the corridor, he suddenly bumps into something. He feels he touched something soft and wonders what it was. He calmly reaches with his hand, wanting to know if that is the limit he can go. But when he touches are 2 magical spheres of clairvoyance that predict a pleasant future. The rascal blushes, and suddenly, he feels something. A slap lands on his face. The girl appears screaming that she will complain about him, and she runs toward the guard while he doesn't understand what is happening. When he looks up, it says Baylor Academy. But as soon as he blinks, the place turns back into the abandoned hospital. He reaches toward a hospital wall, but strangely his hand goes through. He realizes he can't interact with the physical form of it, and thinks that maybe it's like the creatures that need certain conditions. Once again, he passes his hand through the wall, and with that, he goes through it. He feels a bit dizzy and sees an abandoned corridor. Sometime later, he has already looked in several rooms, but they are all empty. But in one of the doors, there is a strong smell of blood. Hesitant, he once again goes to pass through it. He ends up in a room where there seems to be a girl on the floor crying. He keeps looking and she starts to get up, and she looks at him, calling him Big Brother. But now he is resilient and ignores her, passing through the wall. As soon as he comes out on the other side, he faces another creature, but he keeps walking. Even the monster looks confused, and he realizes that there are dozens of strange things there. Every place he enters has a bunch of weird stuff. And the bizarre thing is that some rooms are open in a way that they could escape. Now he is getting good, and doesn't show any reaction. All thanks to the dear wife who killed him 18 times. Suddenly, he sees some papers on the floor that talk about experiment number 128 that underwent a transformation. He crouches to pick them up, wondering if all the transformed are really human. But unfortunately, He can't even turn the page to know what's written since he doesn't belong to that world. Suddenly, something passes through him. He stands up, and it was the hair of a monster on the ceiling. She descends beside his face and asks why he is there. By any chance, is he looking to explore the mysteries of life with her? He ignores her while thinking that maybe the best place to go is the director's office. The mental hospital building is the same one from the memory of the body's owner, which should have been a sales company. And the director's office is where the old staff room used to be. He decides to go upstairs to see if there's anything there. As he walks down the corridor, someone calls for Brother Xiu and asks what he's doing there. Suddenly, a chubby guy appears, yelling at him, asking how he dares to come to work if he's already been fired. But Fang Xiu walks down the corridor and pushes the two aside, thinking there's nothing on this floor. The guy with glasses looks confused and the boss is cursing at him, asking why he's going to the second floor and telling the guy with glasses to stop him. But our protagonist is already walking over there and finally finds the director's office. Someone yells for him to stop, but he's already got his hand on the doorknob. The friends behind him are freaking out, saying it's all over. But just by seeing the leg, you already know what's coming. Look at the waistline, look at the little mouth. In fact, the colleague was already being squashed. The people ask who the protagonist is and what he's doing there, and he suddenly grabs her arm. She tells him to let go and asks what he's doing, but he just throws her aside, saying she's too noisy. She falls and the guy goes to help her without doing anything, while he finds a paper on the desk. And as he expected, there's some kind of big secret in this mental hospital. The message says that if he wants to receive the gift of fate and uncover the secrets of this world, he has to go to room 520. He wonders if this letter was for him, and leaves wanting to know how they knew he was coming. It's in building C, room 520. Suddenly the lamp bursts. The friend with glasses is still following him, while the other three who stayed behind are saying they are scared. He turns on his phone saying something is not right. The friend beside him says he's acting strange today. Why isn't he talking to anyone? He uses the phone to light up the second floor and realizes he's no longer in the mental hospital, but in the old company. The guy having fun asks the chubby one for his phone, who says it also has no signal. He tells him not to worry, because with his status he can access more than he imagines. But if he's not wrong, all these things point to them having entered a strange world. An entire place that was once a normal reality now seems to be suffering anomalies. The people who were working are still worried about not delivering the service. One of the building's guards asks if everything is okay, and says he will take a look to see what happened. One of the girls crouches to pick up her phone and turns on the flashlight, but says it's too weak. The protagonist is there too. He turns on his and asks the guy with glasses why his light is also so low. People are questioning the blonde guy about what he said about them entering a strange world, when suddenly he loses his temper and tells everyone to shut up, saying they need to stay calm because that's the only way they'll survive. People fall silent, seeing that he got stressed out of nowhere. And the guy explains that in simple terms, they have entered a world full of ghosts. Basically, it's an alternate dimension where they live. People are silent for a second and ask about the guard who went to check the light. It's been 3 minutes and he hasn't returned. Tang once again warns that in this world you can't violate any ghost rules or you'll die. The chubby guy, trembling, asks what they're going to do now then. He replies that they urgently need to find a way to escape from there or everyone in that place will die. The protagonist is sweating cold and hears a sound behind him. From the familiar sensation, he knows it's a ghost approaching. He warns everyone that one is about to arrive. People tell him to stop joking because there's no ghost there. But one of the girls gets grabbed by the hair, while Fang Xiu watches the people scream, until he says that Shaoli is already gone. The girl with glasses is scared, saying she must have walked away. She was right next to her and starts calling for her friend, telling her to say something. No one there can see anything properly due to the darkness. Yu Tang asks the protagonist if he saw the ghost's appearance. He replies that unfortunately he couldn't see it since the girl disappeared suddenly. At this moment, everyone starts doubting Fang Xiu, saying that he's acting strange. Yu Tang says that he doesn't seem afraid at all. Could he be a spiritual master? Confused, he asks what that is. The guy finds it strange that Fang Xiu doesn't know what a spiritual master is but is too calm. His identity is in question. The guy explains that a spiritual master is someone who can control their spiritual energy, and in moments like these, they are the necessary people. Fang Xiu asks if the spiritual master thing is someone who learned it in the realm of the strange. If that's the case, he wants to know how to do it. Once again, Tang notices he's very calm and confident, so maybe he's the key to getting out of there. And then he explains that to get out of that world, you need to gather the power of the ghosts. You need to meet 2 conditions simultaneously. The first is to go through the fear between life and death, simulating an emotional trauma. And the second is to come into contact with the ghost to let its power invade your soul. But you must be cautious since ghostly power is like a bloody garment. Even though it covers your body, it also stains your soul. Hearing these words makes Fang Xiu thoughtful, especially because he knows that after multiple deaths, he avoids contact with the ghosts to not die. From the wife to all the street creatures, they are mere illusions as long as he doesn't interact with them. However, when a ghost crosses into reality, it can kill without the need to be seen. So maybe if he can contact them, he will be able to eliminate them. Fang Xiu wonders if this is a good thing. Remembering his wife, he says he's crazy to become a spiritual master and end her. when suddenly, another person from that place disappears. Tang starts to go crazy, telling everyone to shut up or they'll attract more ghosts. Fifi approaches and asks what they are going to do. She's afraid of disappearing. Fang Xiu says it's 2 and 3 minutes. Precisely for men, it's a 3-minute interval, and for women, it's 2. The guard disappeared. 3 minutes later, the girl disappeared, and 2 minutes later, the other guy disappeared. Following this logic, there are 3 minutes left for another one of them to vanish. He starts to leave, and the guys ask where he's going and if he's trying to get himself killed. Fang Xiu says they better start looking for a solution too, or everyone will die in that room. Suddenly, Tang points at him and tells him to stay still because no one is leaving that room. But the protagonist ignores him and says that considering there are 8 of them, in 20 minutes there will be no one left. Fang Xiu looks back and warns that anyone who tries to stop him will die before the ghosts. Walking down the corridors, the friend with glasses asks why they never find the stairs, while Fang Xiu recognizes the lights as the same ones that were in the hospital. Suddenly, he realizes they are now back in the hospital. A friend asks if they are hallucinating because, as far as they remember, they were in the company. Why are they in the horror hospital now? Fang Xiu is now sure that the company and the hospital are overlapping in this reality. The hospital swallowed the company. At this moment, they see a red pool. The entire corridor is dirty, and they recognize the uniforms there as being from the company. Fang Xiu concludes that the ghosts take 2 minutes with women and 3 with men because that's the time it takes to eat each type of person. He says they still have some time, and the guy with glasses says that it seems they are still eating jialing. The protagonist finds it strange because in the hospital, everyone was trapped. And the first time he passed through here, there wasn't all this blood in the corridors. The cuts on the clothes prove they are using some sharp blade, and he found only one like that. Something is coming out of the ceiling, and he remembers that the only one moving freely is the ghost doctor he saw right above him that time. They hear some sounds coming from that direction, and when they look, it's the group that was in the room, coming to ask what they will do. They feel a bit awkward, and the chubby guy asks if they found anything by coming down there first. Suddenly, they scream, and the girl says there's a lot of blood there. Everyone recognizes it as being from their allies' clothes, and Tang asks if everyone was eaten. Fearful, Fifi begs to leave, and Tang says they really need to flee as quickly as possible. They ask Fang Xiu to lead the way, but he says nothing. After a moment of silence, he announces that the time has come. Fifi asks what kind of time he's talking about, and behind them, hair is descending. Hearing the sounds, they slowly turn around, and from the ceiling, the ghost doctor is approaching. The second Fifi gets scared, the creature gets close to the two of them. Everyone tries to run desperately, telling the monster to get away. But something stops Tang. It's Fifi, who had fallen and is begging to be saved. But seeing the monster approaching, he slaps the girl, telling her to let go of him. Seeing everyone flee, Fang Xiu remembers the moment he saw the doctor. And on the ground, Fifi is begging not to be abandoned. But the creature is already holding her by the hair. With tears in her eyes, Fifi begged. But the lights went out and it rained blood in that place. The friend with glasses was shocked to see that Fifi was dead. And the monster didn't stop and continued to strike her multiple times. Fang Xiu noticed that her scalpel techniques were extremely advanced, so she probably practiced a lot. He and his friend were standing there, but the creature didn't seem to be paying attention. Doing 2 surgeries at the same time would be almost impossible. The monster puts away the scalpel and opens her mouth to eat Fifi. Fang Xiu understands that the instinct to eat humans is just because she turned into a ghost. He starts to approach and his friend asks what he's doing next to the monster. Fearlessly, Fang Xiu punches her in the face, but he is startled. Her skin feels hard as steel. He remembers that all the creatures he encountered are extremely powerful compared to humans. The only way is to become a spiritual master to change this situation. The friend calls for him, saying they need to run away. But Fang Xiu says it's okay because that creature only kills one person at a time. That means when she's eating is the safest moment of all. The friend says that soon the monster will finish. But the protagonist says that Fifi had an extra round piece of flesh there that will make it take a little longer. The friend, upon hearing that, vomits, while Fang Xiu remembers that he needs to absorb cursed energy from the creatures. And in a dimension like this, near the ghosts is where the most concentrated power is. A physical touch would be the best way. Seeing the ghost's thighs, he pats them to see if he gets infected. The monster's legs are inverted and Fang Xiu is patting them. The friend tells him to wake up, but it's not the time for this kind of thing. But Fang Xiu just says that if he's scared, he can run away. The guy says okay, and if so, they should go all out. He gets closer to the protagonist to touch the ghost's legs, but soon realizes they are very cold. While patting, the friend says nothing has changed, and Fang Xiu says they will continue. The friend says he never thought the first contact would be with a ghost, but these legs are really too long. The protagonist begins to think that this guy has some hidden potential. Since before he was dying of fear, but now he's drooling. He announces that a minute has passed. They will bother her for another 30 seconds and then run immediately. As soon as the clock hits 1:30 on the phone, he stands up, saying it's time to flee. The friend asks if they can really escape and where he's going. Fang Xiu is sure where he's going as he observed the hospital very well when he walked around, and they will use the terrain advantage to create a distance from the doctor. But hair appears in front of him. He wonders if he miscalculated and how she finished eating so quickly. The amount of flesh Fifi had was enough. Then he notices 2 silicone implants on the floor. Everything was fake, and now the ghost is behind him. She makes a cut right on his neck. With that, the boy's screen goes dark. After his head rolls through the air, he opens his eyes again. But now he's back at the moment with that monster, right when the friend said it was very cold. Fangxiu concludes that the time loops are defined by events. Or maybe it's like a game where you have to pass a level and part of it gets saved. The friend is having fun, but he knows that last time he died because of the silicone. So this time, he can't make the same mistake. He quickly grabs the boy and tells him to get up. But drooling, the rascal says it's the first time, they can stay a bit longer. Fangxiu warns that everything there is silicone, so if they don't run now, they'll both die. The friend is shocked, now understanding why it was so big. With that, the two are already fleeing down the stairs and encounter the people who were also coming down. The desperate crowd starts running faster than them. But Fangxiu grabs the handrail and throws himself in front of everyone. The chubby guy says he thought it was the ghost and tells him not to scare them like that. The guy with glasses wanted to know why everyone was fleeing so slowly. The guy said they weren't slow since they had already descended 20 floors. But Zhao Hao said that's impossible since he and Fangxiu only descended 3 to catch up with them. The people tell him to shut up and stop lying. But Tang understands that the ghost is creating false paths. He warns that monsters like this can create illusions in which you get trapped. Fangxiu becomes thoughtful and observes the discussion. Then he approaches and tells everyone to throw any spare items on the floor to mark the way. With that, they scream and start dropping everything they have in their bags and pockets. Then he tells everyone to go down the stairs quickly. They start running, and after a while, they find everything again. The guys recognize the money and bottles they had thrown. But Fangxiu was interested in the small shirt. Suddenly, Tang shouts and says that only a spiritualist can see the exit. He tells everyone to activate their power and try to see something. He clasps his hands, saying he doesn't know if that previous experience was enough to unleash the powers, but he hopes it is to escape from there. The people are confused, not knowing how they're going to do that. They start trying like the guy did while Fangxiu observes the stairs. He remembers that the exits from these corridors were on the right side, so it must be something similar. Seeing this, Tang asks what he's going to do again. He says he doesn't care about praying and is more interested in finding clues to escape from there. Hao was impressed that Fangxiu was still very calm, while Tang thought he didn't hesitate even for a second when the monster appeared. The strange thing is that now they fled down the stairs and found the two again. Not to mention that both spent at least a minute with the monster in the corridor, so what happened? For some reason, the psycho concludes that they should be taking advantage of the ghost. It makes a lot of sense, but obviously he thinks that's not possible, thank God. Fangxiu was touching a wall and Hao asked what he was doing. He was counting between 10, 12, 15 and said to stop. He said he found it. The friend was impressed that there was actually a door, and Tang appeared, asking if they really found it, and came running. The problem was how to open it. He imagined where the lock should be and moved his hand in the void that opened the door, from which an energy came out. Fangxiu was about to be the first to enter, but Tang bumped into him and ran out, saying they were finally saved. Everyone passed by him, desperately trying to escape. Hao asked why he was letting everyone go ahead and how he was so calm. Fangxiu knew very well that facing that creature, there was no reason to try to be fast. When a chubby, big-nosed guy appeared, telling the two to run or they'd be used as shields to die. Fangxiu's plan was obviously to see who would get caught. That way the ghost would stop and he could increase his spiritual power. The people continued in front, fleeing desperately, until suddenly they had to choose between 2 directions. This created a divergence in the team since everyone wanted other people to go ahead to test the paths. And Tang once again asked Fangxiu what they should do. If he found that iron door, he must know the way out of there. Fangxiu wasn't very keen on helping since everyone kept pushing and expecting him to die. The group kept shouting, telling him to speak up quickly because the ghost was approaching. Fangxiu just said he didn't care about that, thinking that for him, everyone there was just a tool. At that moment, the ghost doctor was invincible, and what he had to do was buy time. As he goes down the right path, he thinks that to get out of there, he will have to sacrifice lives. As soon as the group sees him take that path, they start running, and a hand can be heard coming from behind. The chubby guy is the last one, and Fangxiu knows very well that she has arrived. Soon on the ceiling, she is preparing to attack him. As she sees everyone fleeing, she approaches the last one. As the hair draws closer, the chubby guy panics, saying he can't die. Seeing a guy in front, he thinks he didn't give permission for him to run faster, so he grabs him by the collar and throws him back. The blonde falls to the ground, calling out to the chubby guy, but something has already slashed his neck, and the walls are painted with blood. Seeing how the guy did that, Fangxiu thinks he is no different from a ghost who lost his sanity. But now he needs to increase his spirituality. The group asks what he is going to do, and there he is once again, facing the ghost. The sick friend approaches, saying he can't have all the fun without inviting him, saying that smooth cold skin like that is like ice jade. Fangxiu thinks the guy suddenly turned into a poet. Seeing how crazy he is, maybe he will also awaken spiritual power and together they can escape. Sometime later they are fleeing again and Fangxiu asks if he's not afraid of dying. Hao says that waiting for death is worse than being killed directly. Besides, he trusts him because he's there. At that moment, they arrive at the cafeteria. Everyone is dying of hunger and thirst as they've been running for a long time. Tang starts grabbing everything, saying he will hand it out to others later. The chubby guy approaches, asking to share a bit, when suddenly a girl says she found something and he tells her not to move. It's a door, and he approaches, saying they are saved. But as soon as he opens it, there's another door at the end of the corridor. Fang Xiu notices that the light there is more suppressed than before. As he approaches the door, Fang Xiu says it's not locked. As they open it, it's just a utility room. That was the end of the path they chose, and the problem now is that to go back, they will have to wait for someone to die and distract the doctor. The protagonist started to head back in search of the ghost while everyone cursed him for choosing the wrong path. Obviously, he didn't like that because he didn't ask anyone to follow him. Hao commented that everyone should do what they want, and brother Fang Xiu didn't force anyone to follow him. A chubby guy complained, saying it didn't matter since it looked like he chose without knowing anything. Tang tried to calm everyone down, saying to concentrate as survival was the priority. He said that from what he observed, that creature attacks one person at a time and rests for 2 to 3 minutes. The choice now is to pick someone to serve as a distraction and create an opportunity for everyone to escape. Fang Xiu understood immediately what was going to happen. Tang came and hit him on the chest, saying that if it wasn't for him, no one would be there, so he would have to be the one chosen to pay for the sins. Hao asked what he was doing, and Tang shouted for everyone to help, but Fang Xiu stepped in and put him in a chokehold. As he was pulled away, he called the chubby guy to help, who now put Hao in a chokehold too and fell with him to the ground. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. Fang Xiu had isolated himself outside. The group asked what he was doing. Fang Xiu said he never imagined he'd be so interested in people. Apparently, they are stranger than ghosts. He thanked them for their interest, but warned that he would make everyone pay next time. And with that, he died again. As his body fell to the ground, the group opened the door to run out. Hao, with tears in his eyes, went to help Fang. And as Tang looked back, smiling, he saw something terrifying. Even dead, Fang Xiu was smiling and told him to just wait a little longer. Back to the moment, he warned that it was silicone. He ran out, but this time smiling in a macabre way. The guys were running down the stairs, trying to escape, thinking the ghost was coming, when once again he fell in front. Ignoring everyone, he started running as they asked what he was doing. While he descended the steps, counting, the group was once again dealing with the problem of walking in circles. He reached the door and opened it without fear. No one understood how he found it so quickly. Tang asked if he had awakened his spiritual powers, but he just ignored them and warned they had 1 minute before the ghost would appear. Seeing this, Tang smiled, saying it seemed he had indeed awakened his powers. If he helped him escape, he would pay 5 million. But Fang Xiu just smiled, saying there was no need to rush because he needed to resolve something before leaving. When Tang was about to ask what it was, Fang Xiu kneed him in the groin. The poor guy groaned and fell to the floor in pain. Fang Xiu said he should use the 5 million to treat that. Agonizing, Tang said he could pay even more if only he asked. But now the protagonist was cold. The rest of the company started cursing him, asking how he could be so dirty. But Fang Xiu warned that it was impossible to escape the ghost's speed. But with Tang on the ground, everyone was saved. The group was confused about this notion of being saved, until suddenly another kick landed, and now the chubby guy was writhing on the floor. Fang Xiu said he should have died a long time ago. Hao and the rest of the group were asking if he had gone mad, and if he was going to do this to everyone. Fang Xiu said no because he needed at least one person left. Hao said it was a good plan, while the group began to question if he was really human. He pointed the way and said they were running out of time, but the group began to suspect since he wasn't leading the way. Fang Xiu said he would just stay there to touch some thighs. The group was confused, and the psychopath friend said he definitely wanted to stay then. The Dr. Ghost approached once again. As soon as the group saw her, they resumed fleeing, but they stopped right behind the wall to observe what would happen, while the protagonist watched the monster approach. On the ground, Tang begged to be saved, but he soon realized his pants were wet. Fang Xiu's kick had caused internal bleeding, and he jumped to grab his legs, saying they would die together. But Fang Xiu just stepped on his hand and told him not to worry. He would stay there, right beside him, watching him die. The monster grabbed his neck, and with that, the guy was gone. Paint covered Fang Xiu's face, which he even licked. The guy was really crazy. He even said that the taste of revenge wasn't so bad. But at that moment, he felt something in his heart, and wondered how it was possible for his chest to beat so fast. Suddenly, he heard his wife's voice calling for him, and thought it would be amazing to see her get torn apart like this guy. He began making advances toward the ghost, and the group wondered if this was really his plan. He stared at Hao, and remembered that at the moment of his death, the guy had called for him. With that, he invited his friend to join in. But Hao didn't seem very keen, and everyone called him a ghost. At that moment, Fang Xiu realized that having died those 20 times and experienced so much madness was causing him to no longer have any emotional fluctuations. His humanity was slowly disappearing, and at that moment, he and Zhao Hao were completely different. But he had no option, so he wouldn't force his friend. But suddenly Zhao said that in that company, he was the only person he could trust. As he was his only true friend, he would trust his plan. But he said he looked scary with that wine all over his face. But he soon approached with a blushing face to activate more spiritual power. While they were having fun, Hao asked why he attacked those two. Fang Xiu said that considering the ghost's speed, it was impossible to escape. And as soon as she caught up, those two having higher positions, would discard the others. Suddenly, he felt something and asked Hao if he felt a coldness approaching his body. Hao said no, he was normal. While Fangzhu realized it wasn't an illusion, what he was feeling was an influence of the ghost's power. He noticed that the connection was very weak, but it seemed to be reaching a critical point. Perhaps it was the precursor to gaining spiritual powers. But now Hao seemed motivated, wanting to find this cold region. Suddenly, he warned they should run. However, Fangzhu said there was no problem since the chubby guy was lying nearby. The boy smiled, saying that was really good news. But he asked what it felt like to awaken spirituality since he wasn't feeling anything. Fangzhu explained that what he probably lacked were life or death situations. The mental state hadn't reached the necessary point yet, which is why he didn't feel it. Hao found that strange and wondered when Fangzhu experienced something like that. Seeing her lick the chubby guy's face, he said it was a good thing because it would take about 5 minutes. They would have to use this time to absorb as much as possible. And with that, the cold energy began to invade Fang's body. He started to try to perceive where it was going, and soon felt it seemed to be going to his brain and heart. They were now turning into blocks of ice. A cold blade cut through his entire body, and after being shattered, a light appeared in his chest, a flash that concentrated and turned into a red sphere. As soon as Fangzhu regained consciousness, he realized that all his 5 senses had been sharpened. Even his thinking speed and control over his body had improved. It was as if more parts of the world had become available to him. But he realized he had awakened less than 1% of his spiritual capacity. The abilities seemed to be related to the desire he felt. He wondered what that was and suddenly felt a shock in his heart. He agonized and wondered if his ability was to cause pain. The sequence of deaths made his greatest desire to return that sensation. Whether it was negative emotions, mind distortions, or pain, he could make enemies experience all of it. Out of nowhere, he smiled and started laughing, saying that now he was incredible with this ability. Seeing him go crazy, Hao asked if that had worked, while Fangzhu concluded that he had received the best possible ability for him. Remembering his dear wife, he stood in a trance while Hao called for him, saying that 2 minutes had passed. But Fangzhu just told him to step aside as he was going to test his power. Immediately, Hao stepped back, saying it seemed to have worked, and that was very good. He then approached the ghost doctor. Concentrating the power in his hand, he knew that it carried everything he had experienced in those days. He knew that the more times he died, the more pain he would accumulate, and the stronger he would become. As long as he continued being revived, he could infinitely strengthen himself. He punched the ghost in the face, saying he wanted her to experience this masterpiece. The punch hit her squarely, but the power seemed to dissipate. She was thrown back and dropped the scalpel while crying on the floor. But Fangzhu immediately realized that his punch was mediocre, and the little spirituality he had was now exhausted. The blow hadn't hurt the ghost, and she didn't seem to have felt the pain he did. While he thought about this, Hao said maybe it was time to run away, or they could go back to touching again. He thought that maybe putting this energy into weapons would be the best way. And speaking of weapons, there was one right on the ground for him to use. He crouched to pick it up, but soon felt an energy. That blade seemed impossible to lift, and its power immediately attacked Fang's heart. He could see all the times that weapon had been used, the infinite amount of pain it had absorbed. But with so much resentment, he wondered if he could use it to end the doctor. He told Hao to step aside. As soon as he did, he attacked the doctor right on the back of the neck. But it did nothing. Hao pulled at her shirt and said it didn't even leave a scratch. How are they going to kill her like this? The friend kept patting her back, and Fangzhu concluded that without spiritual power, it wouldn't work. At that moment, he understood that revenge was not possible right now. She was getting up, and he was driving Hao, saying it was time to run. As soon as the monster got up, she wondered where the scalpel was. Walking with Hao, he sensed someone's presence. With his sharpened senses, he could perceive the presence of others. Hao asked where they were going when the two who had been hiding appeared. Hao called them cowards for running away and now coming back to ask for help. But Fangzhu said there was only one solution. They would have to go through each of the 4 doors. Everyone was scared, and the guy said that with the monster following them, they only had time to try one. Fangzhu ignored them and walked away, saying he wasn't forcing anyone to follow him. As soon as they heard a sound behind them, they knew she was getting closer. Fangzhu realized that by stealing the scalpel, the ghost's behavior would change. He opened the door and told everyone to run. They started climbing the stairs in desperation. As soon as they closed the door, it was destroyed from behind, and the ghost began to ascend the corridor. With a macabre face, she told him to give it back. She ignored everyone on the stairs and went face to face with Fang, telling him to hand over the scalpel. Fangzhu managed to defend himself when she attacked, but then she opened her mouth and went for his neck. At the east gate, they died. They went to another room. This time, he ended up coloring the chubby guy in another place. Once again, he stole the scalpel and headed in another direction, smiling. They ran to the north gate and reached the elevator. But as soon as he tried to enter, the monster opened the door and finished him off too. Then he tried the south gate, but once again, he was caught by the malicious and flexible ghost. Really cruel since he died. He tried the last door. He didn't want to accept that by stealing the scalpel, he would always die. Even though she was extremely fast, he still had the revive to change the trajectory each time. In a way, it was as if he could foresee the future. He knew there was a safe passage to the left, but something came at his neck, and once again, he died. It had already been the night time, and now he was sure he could do it. He guided everyone in that same direction. The ghost appeared behind everyone and approached him. She was once again heading straight for Fang. At that moment, Ho turned and told him to be careful. Right when she was about to land a blow on his face, he managed to sidestep, making her miss, and stood face to face with the doctor. She was confused about how he dodged, and Ho found it impossible that he had done that. Smiling like a madman, Fang Xiu fled. Once again, she tried to hit him and he managed to duck. After numerous deaths, he had learned her attack patterns. Moreover, the pain was strengthening his body and increasing his spiritual power. Ho was impressed with his ability to predict movements. The ghost didn't like this at all. She prepared to jump and bite him, but he was confident that he now knew her trajectory entirely. As she came at him once again, he rolled to the side and dodged again. The ghost was already going crazy, telling him to die already. The group couldn't believe he was escaping her. While Ho was thinking this was the power of a spiritual master, running towards the door, he once again saw the exit, confident that now they would escape. But strangely, the ghost stopped in front of him. He was confused and she told him not to go while trembling. Fang Xiu found it strange because she seemed scared. With that, she fled, delivering a precise attack on poor Hao. The poor guy staggered back, wondering what that cold thing was. He ran to Fang Xiu and asked what had happened. He said everything was normal and according to logic, that was the path to survival. But he realized that even the doctor fled when she saw that place. That meant it might not be the exit, but rather something so terrifying that even she was scared. He knew it was the mouth of an abyss. The group kept asking why he didn't run. He sat down, saying it was good to rest for a while. After thinking a bit, he had an idea and told everyone to get up. Once again, they walked through those hospital corridors, and he slowly approached the metal door, wondering if there really was a great danger outside. As he began to open it, Hao asked if it wouldn't be risky to do so. He said they had no option but to go and enter the darkness. There, he couldn't see anything at all, and the place was so silent that he could hear his thoughts. The darkness had swallowed the path from which he came, so the only option was to move forward. He kept moving forward and forward. It seemed that the very sense of time had been consumed. It was as if the path had no end. After walking for what felt like an eternity, he opened his eyes and found himself in front of the academy's entrance, making him wonder if he had really escaped. Everyone ran past and Hao celebrated that they had finally escaped. The guy wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible, and Hao called out to Fang, telling him to run too. But Fang Xiu knew something was strange. When he looked back, he remembered. The only visible thing was the school, and the hospital had disappeared. Hao said he just wanted to go home and rest because the day had been exhausting. That's when Fang noticed something. He started running around saying it had vanished. There were no ghosts in the city. He couldn't accept that he escaped without any reason. He could accept the hospital disappearing, but not the disappearance of all the ghosts. How would he be able to get revenge on his dear wife? He found himself in front of a car saying that she had to die at his hands. That's why he needed to go home. But the driver braked, and now he was in the passenger seat, murmuring to himself that she couldn't just disappear like that. He didn't want his wife to vanish that way. As soon as the taxi stopped, he ran home desperately. The driver complained that he hadn't paid, but he didn't care and ran up the stairs, saying that World couldn't disappear. He entered his house, shouting that she couldn't leave him like that, but the place seemed normal. After checking all the rooms, he fell to the floor, saying that she had killed him 18 times. How could he live without her for the rest of his life? All that suffering at the hands of the ghost doctor was to get revenge. He accumulated rage and pain to end the ghosts, but now they were all gone. Lying on the bed, he wondered where he would direct all that hatred, and now, without any feeling, what was the meaning of life? At that moment, he received a message on his phone telling him to check the news. The Bailu Academy was burning. He immediately saw that the news reported a fire that engulfed the entire building. More than 11 people died, including some of the bosses there. The psychopath Fang Xiu started laughing, because the message said they had found his body dead. He got excited, thinking that apparently the mysterious things hadn't ended. They just wanted to play hide and seek with him. Now he was sure he could see his wife again. On his phone, he was getting a bunch of messages from the boss telling him to come to work. He laughed because this guy was dead. It was ironic that even dead, the boss kept ordering him to work. Suddenly, a bloody message appeared on the phone, saying that just because he wasn't speaking, it didn't mean he didn't know. An energy came out of the phone and created an eye that said it saw him, and ordered him to follow now. Fang Xiu calmly grabbed the eye and told it to stop possessing the phone because he only had one. With that, the illusion dissipated. But he was curious to see what the next mystery was. Now in front of the academy, which was completely destroyed, he smelled the burnt everything and thought it looked very realistic. Suddenly, he saw Fifi standing there. All excited, she came to talk to him, saying he arrived early today. He touched her shoulders and asked if she was real. She said he was getting very bold, but suddenly he pulled her, saying he knew very well how things had happened. He was going to climb the stairs when Hao appeared and asked if he was forced to work. He said he actually liked it a lot and asked where boss Dahai was. Hao pointed and said the guy was at the back of the room. Strangely, company was as busy as ever, and Fang Xiu began to wonder if what he saw was a lie and this was actually reality. When he found the boss, he was scolded, being asked why he had responded to the message in the group. Fang Xiu ignored this and asked when he would receive his commissions. Dahai said he had the nerve to arrive late and talk about commissions, while Fang Xiu complained, saying that even dead, Dahai was disgusting. The The boss pointed his finger at him, asking what he was talking about dying, and told him to speak properly because he was very much alive. But suddenly, Fang Shu finished him off with the ghost doctor's weapon. The boss groaned and fell to the ground. Fang Shu smiled, saying that apparently now he wasn't alive anymore. Everyone at work stands up and stares at him. Fang Shu walks over to Hao, pats his shoulder, and asks what happened. Suddenly, Hao's body inflates and transforms. Fang Shu realizes that everyone's bodies are cursed and starts finishing them off. When he's done, he asks whoever did this if they had enough fun, but he realizes it's all a dream. On the ground, the people are writhing, begging for a like in this video to help. And you remember the last chapter ended when Fang Shu returned to the company. After he finished everyone off, a sort of illusion broke, and the employees were all lying on the ground unconscious. Looking down a dark path, he wondered if it was a dream or perhaps the power of the entity against him. Suddenly, a flaming eyeball carrying a bunch of skulls asked how he could see through dreams. Fang Shu said it's ridiculous how it knows so much about dreams but nothing about silicone. That was way too soft. The confused creature asked why he didn't seem scared. Fang Shu just responded that it seems the creature depends on fear to kill him. And in that case, he apologizes, saying all it did was ignite his will to stay alive and break this illusion. He walks up to a door while the eye watches him, and with that, it distances itself, saying it will remember the human who fears nothing. Fang Shu begins to wonder if it was this eye that was terrifying the doctor. Observing the number of illusions around him, he knows he is still in the dream and is being manipulated. If that is the case, he will have to start over and apologizes to Zhao Hao. With that, Fang Shu resets the day once again. Now knowing that the creature's power in this place is to manipulate dreams, all he has to do is not sleep. They manage to escape once again, but Fang Shu noticed that everything was too normal. Knowing that this would only happen in dreams, he ends himself again. With this, he knows he is trapped in someone else's dream and believes he will have to help Zhao Hao conquer his own fears. He explains to everyone that the safe passage is actually a lie and what happens there is that you are dominated by a false dream. He goes to Zhao Hao and warns him that he cannot fall for this illusion. As long as he survives his fears, he can get out alive. And the secret to always confirming if you are in a dream is to pet Fifi, because the sensation is different. Zhao Hao says he doesn't know how it should feel since he doesn't know the real sensation. Unfortunately, after multiple attempts, people were still getting trapped in the dreams. He knew all of this was fabricated by the bizarre creature, the problem being that everyone had different illusions. The biggest issue is that only the person can break the dream they are trapped in. He tells Zhao Hao to wake up, but the boy is mumbling. He slaps him in the face repeatedly. He kicks him in the groin, but even in agony, the boy doesn't wake up. Fang Shu is confused because nothing is working. He grabs the scalpel, saying he will have to resolve it this way. Without mercy for his friend, he cuts his thigh. Zhao Hao agonizes, begging him to stop, but then faints to the side. Our protagonist has no idea how he will save this guy. He realizes he will have to restart everything once again. However, if that doesn't work, you might have to give up. When they wake up, Zhao Hao comments that he was dreaming of a very friendly ghost. She was very soft, but just when he was about to embrace her, he unfortunately woke up. Fang Shu ignores him, and the guide next to him talks about the safe exit. Suddenly, Zhao Hao excitedly shouts that when he gets out, he will find a woman to flirt with. Seeing how determined Zhao Hao seems about getting a woman, Fang Shu decides to use this emotion. Since conquering the fear isn't working, you will have to use another emotion. He then tells Zhao Hao to turn on the phone and leave the volume at maximum, which confuses the boy. But our protagonist says they will use his favorite movie. We see a girl in a classroom and she says that the private lessons from the beautiful teacher are about to begin. Zhao Hao is already all bruised and the teacher explains that he is getting many questions wrong, so he will have to be punished. Zhao Hao knows this is his favorite movie and tells Fang Shu that they can watch it when they leave. However, our boy looks at him saying that it is the only way to save the boy's life. Embarrassed, Zhao Hao says it's okay, takes the cell phone and plays the video. A small mouth blows a kiss, and the teacher appears saying that he will have to be spanked a little. Fang Shu tells him to pay attention to the story and let things flow naturally as in the movie. Zhao Hao, all blushing, says he understood very well. Meanwhile, the couple behind them wonders if they should also participate in that. The teacher starts beating the boy and everyone is watching it. As they watch together, hearts are floating all around. Zhao Hao's head is already exploding as he imagines answering everything the teacher asks. Seeing that the boy's emotions are running high, Fang Shu says it's time to go. He warns his friend that if something scary happens, he should try to find the difference between reality and the dream. Strangely, Fang Shu feels a bit bored, thinking that after living this day so many times, he even misses going home to his wife. A while later, the couple died and they did not survive the illusions they had to face. Fang Shu only wants to know if Zhao Hao is okay. Next to him, Zhao Hao is saying that he just wants to try a little. The boy is shaking his head with his tongue out. Fang Shu thinks it's crazy that his friend survived because of the teacher. Then he notices something strange. The boy seems to be emanating some sort of spiritual aura. He understands that his friend is about to awaken his powers. A while later, Zhao Hao is lying on the ground drooling. He suddenly wakes up and stands up saying to Fifi not to run. Then he realizes he is in the wrong place and asks Fang Shu if that is the exit and if he succeeded. Fang Shu just watches and approaches. Strangely, Zhao Hao tells him to come closer so he can give him a little squeeze. Our boy tells him to wake up to life and says it's incredible that his friend overcame the illusion using that kind of thing. Shy Zhao Hao runs off to get his cell phone, which is with the couple. However, as soon as he falls, he sees that they are already gone. He backs away scared, wondering if they really died. Fang Xiu says that unfortunately, yes. But now with his hand on the steel door, he wonders if this is the end of it all. He pushes it and a golden light comes out. Both are blinded and the next second, they find themselves outside. Xiao Hao celebrates, saying that they finally managed to get out. Looking up, Fang Xiu sees a bunch of creatures and agrees that they really did escape the illusion. Then he turns to Zhao Hao and wonders if he awakened his spiritual side. The boy seems confused and says he just had a strange feeling as if all his senses had been enhanced. Fang Xiu understands that he awakened and asks what ability he received. The poor guy crying says he can't feel any ability and wonders if he's a failure even in that. With that, he asks Fang Xiu what his power is. Our boy says he has precognition. The friend is shocked, saying that now it explains how he could know the way through everything. Fang Xiu thinks that for now, it is better for people to believe that this is his power. This will attract the attention of powerful people, and he will be able to evolve to the maximum. Once he gets stronger, he will be able to take revenge on everyone and especially on his bad wife. The question that remains in his mind is whether the hospital illusion exists inside that office. Why can't he see it anymore? He can't understand if there is some relation between reality and the strange world. What he knows is that fortunately, everything he encountered this time was a creature that could only fabricate dreams. If it had been something that corrupted his mind, perhaps he would be trapped forever. Because if he or Zhao Hao had to face something with absolute power, even dying 10,000 times, it would be impossible to break the illusion. The only thing he finds strange is that Zhao Hao doesn't seem to be seeing any of the scary things. He comments about this, and his friend looks up, asking what he is talking about. A bird passes by, and Fang Xiu says he must have seen it wrong. However, right behind his friend, a creature is about to hug him. Fang Xiu wonders if he is actually the only one who can see this type of monster. What he wanted was to find someone else who could also come to understand this better. Zhao Hao is disappointed that his friend has precognition, but he doesn't even know what he can do. With that, he tells Fang Xiu that it's better if they leave soon. They start to leave, and our boy asks how he broke the dream. He says he followed the tips exactly as his friend said. He dived into the dream and ventured to feel everything. The protagonist knows that when everyone died last time, the creature appeared to him. However, now that Zhao Hao survived, even with everyone else dead, it didn't appear. This means there is something that perhaps even he doesn't know. With that, he asks his friend why he was caressing and kissing the air. Embarrassed, he asks if he really moved like that in real life. Fang Xiu says yes, he made some gestures and even some weird noises. Zhao Hao begs him to be quiet, but Fang Xiu says he was just joking. The strange thing is that even Fang Xiu himself noticed that he has almost no facial expressions anymore. Zhao Hao begs him not to tell anyone about it, and our boy just agrees. With that, he says he will explain that it was nothing serious. All he did was close his eyes and imagine the teachers giving various lessons. One of them told him to keep her company and die. Suddenly, he started to feel an extremely cold hand. In an instant, several other hands appeared, and he remembered that Fang Xiu had told him to stay focused. So he tried to protect himself to escape the hands. That was his plan, to distract himself from those sensations. Even though the hands were annoying him, he remained focused. Fang Xiu was wondering what kind of story is this? The room that was terrifying suddenly became romantic again. A hand approached once more and touched his. It was a girl who called him a classmate and asked why he wasn't paying attention. As soon as he opened his eyes, he was startled and she was face to face with the boy. The girl wasn't Ash, but she was holding a Pokeball. He was embarrassed and told her to back off. However, she waved a weapon and leaned forward, so he ran and grabbed her. He felt an indescribable softness and was all happy until a giant tooth appeared in front of him. The creature transformed and asked if he was scared. His arms were immobilized and he was about to be devoured. He told Fang Xiu that he was terrified at that moment and thought he was dead. However, he freed his arms and once again went on an adventure. If he was going to die, he wouldn't let it be for nothing. With that, the monster was scared that he had no fear. Fang Xiu starts to wonder if the creature didn't appear because it was afraid of being abused by this madman. With that, his friend asks why he wanted to know about these things, and our boy just says to forget about it. Then Fang Xiu says he will get a taxi home and to just text him if he needs anything. Zhao Hao comments that all his colleagues died, so how is he going to go home alone? Our boy just looks back and asks if he wants to call security. He feels a bit awkward and realizes it's not the best option. With that, Fang Xiu leaves, warning that soon the spiritual organizations will be looking for him. Sometime later, his wife says it's very good that he has come home and asks if he has eaten. Our boy smiles, saying that now he has finally found her. She makes a grim face and he says that he is back. With that, she is about to say that he can see her when suddenly a slash passes. Fang Xiu didn't hesitate for a second and says he missed that wife. Smiling, he asks if she wanted to see him that much too. But strangely, everything resets and he finds himself in front of the house again. He has no idea how he died. Apparently, his wife's power is much greater than he was expecting. Hesitantly, he puts his hand on the doorknob and enters the house. Once again, she says she missed him and asks if he wants something to eat. Once again, Fang Xiu just ignores her, realizing that the power difference between them is still incomprehensible. Meanwhile, an emergency meeting is taking place in a building. Director Wang Dehai says that everyone must have heard the news. 5 hours ago, a mysterious phenomenon occurred at the school academy, but no one knows about it yet. The secretary says these are the recordings from the area. Unfortunately, all they could discover was about these two survivors, a boy named Fang Xiu and another named Zhao Hao. Looking at the boys' histories, both seem to be ordinary people. With that, he asks the staff what they think about it. A guy with glasses says that if two normal guys survived, it must be a rank D place. However, someone says they highly doubt that. A blonde-haired girl says that in the footage, the boy named Fang Xiu seemed too calm. Her assistant comments that there's a possibility he became a spiritual master in there. However, the guy with glasses insists, saying that even if they awakened, it must be an extremely easy place since they came out alive. The director orders everyone to shut up and says that the investigation team should contact these people and find out if they managed to awaken their powers. Lingxi says she understands the orders very well. Meanwhile, Fang Xiu wakes up in his room. As always, his wife is there, telling him not to worry about her and to go back to sleep. However, Fang Xiu is in a conversation with Zhao Hao, who says he has discovered what his ability is. He explains that the reason it didn't work yesterday is that it seems to only work after 11 a.m. and lasts until 1 a.m. Fang Xiu tells him to hurry up and say it. Zhao Hao says that his friend's ability is good, but his own ability is now much better. Our boy is already losing patience and tells him to quickly say what kind of power he received. Zhao Hao explains that his power makes him look incredibly handsome after 11 a.m. and his muscles are on fire. Fang Xiu thinks this guy is messing with him and says he will hang up this nonsense. When he goes to the bathroom and turns on the faucet, his wife says he has incredible pressure. Our boy is confused by this annoying woman who won't leave him alone. In the kitchen, Zhao Hao continues talking about how much stronger the boy has become. Thinking about this, Fang Xiu just keeps his phone to the side, as he imagined the abilities are a reflection of a person's greatest desire. Apparently, Zhao Hao always dreamed of being strong, which is why he receives such a power. He sits down to have breakfast and his wife says it's the perfect time for that. At another part of the city, someone gets out of a car. It's Lingshui asking what they have discovered from observing the boy's messages. The guy says that apparently one of them really became a spiritual master. She asks about their powers and the guy remains silent. He says they have no idea about Fang Xiu's power, but the boy Zhao Hao seems to become very handsome from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., especially in physical capacity and extracurricular activities. Lingxi says the boy has the perfect ability to work as a stripper. However, while climbing the stairs, she says they need to know Fang Xiu's ability, especially because depending on his powers, he could be a risk to society. Wenji just agrees, saying he understood. Back home, his wife is there asking if he can see her. Our boy is ignoring her as always, watching his TV, until he hears something coming from the door. He gets up to see what it is while his wife tells him to take a look at her. He goes to the peephole and wonders if what's on the other side is human or bizarre. He's already faced with Lingxu's heavy armament. The people knock on the door and he hears the sound, meaning they are human. With that, he opens the door and asks what they want. Lingxi starts to introduce herself, and at that moment, our boy already pulls out the card. He says they came faster than he thought, and his wife clings to his arm, telling the friends to come in. That catches the attention of the two. Lingxi asks if he knew they were coming. In the living room, Fang Xiu notices that everyone is ignoring his wife. He wonders if they also know the danger and are pretending like him, or if there's some other reason. Looking at the card, he calls Wenji by name. The guy introduces himself and says he's an investigator, and the girl next to him is Shen Xui, and he's her assistant. Fang Xiu looks at her, and she stares back, asking how they already knew about the investigation office. Our boy simply responds that in a world as paranormal as this, it was obvious there would be some association maintaining order. Lingxi responds that it's extraordinary he remains so calm with so many bizarre events. She then explains that they are a department dealing with the mysterious and peculiar. They are there first to find out what happened at the academy and second to see if he has the potential to join the team. Our boy shows no reaction. While the wife is in his face, Lingxi says that there are freelancers who also work for them. However, those who are directly related to the office receive much more resources to strengthen themselves. The wife keeps insisting, saying it's good he's not looking at that blonde, and asks if he still loves her. Fang Xiu is just observing his wife's face, thinking how wonderful it would be if she had a desperate expression. Then she would be charming. The blonde continues saying that first of all, he will have to explain very well what happened at that academy. Fang Xiu stands up and says that before answering that, there are things he wants to know. The blonde gets irritated and says he's not in a position to make any demands. The assistant tells her to calm down because it's not good to solve things that way. Then the protagonist says that Lingxi seems to have spiritual powers. However, her assistant is a completely normal person. He asks if that's how investigations work or if she's so corrupted by her powers that she needs someone to supervise her. The girl starts to exude an aura again, and Wenji tells her to calm down. However, she just asks if he's looking for trouble. The assistant asks to stop provoking her because if she loses her temper, everyone there will die. Fang Xiu just ignores it and says that first, they will have to explain what power really is in this mysterious world. The woman says that everyone who survives the mysterious asks that question. What is the reason for it? Where does it come from? And what is his purpose? Currently, the only thing the office knows is that they are all corrupted entities and sources of human pollution. Each creature has its own way of existing. Some are made of flesh and blood, while others are purely spiritual. They follow no pattern and appear out of nowhere. Furthermore, they all seem to hate humanity and have a tendency to consume people. Or rather, they feed on the spirit that exists in humans. The assistant explains that this is what they know so far. Fang Xiu asks how the levels of the masters are categorized. The guy says he's impressed that he knows even about that and explains that the current level is measured by how much they can use of their essence. While the guy writes about it, the wife licks her lips, saying there seems to be a lot of good things to eat. He then explains that the rankings are made by the percentage of spiritual power that a person possesses, and for every 20% increase, you rise in rank. Fang Xiu then asks what happens when you reach 100%. The secretary explains that, in fact, no one has ever reached 100% in all of history. This is because the more you want to increase, the more you have to challenge scary things. The result is that everyone who seeks to reach 100% dies in the process. He then says he will ask the third question. Ling Shu loses her temper and says he must be feeling very full of himself to ask so many questions. She throws the notebook to the assistant and tells him to go to the website if he wants to find out anything. The only advice she gives is not to believe the emails he receives from other people. With that said, now he is to give all the information about what happened at the academy. Fang Xiu ignores her and says he has one more question. Were they seeing his wife behind him? At that moment, she gets emotional. This guy is crazy. What is he doing? Ling Shu looks confused and the protagonist's reality starts to distort. The assistant says they checked the information and saw nothing about a wife or girlfriend. Meanwhile, the wife is jumping around happily, saying she knew he was always seeing her. She gets close to his face, saying he should have told the truth from the beginning. The investigators seem to find something strange, and the guy whispers that it's normal for people to have hallucinations once they discover their powers. He imagines that Fang Xiu's mental state is worse than they thought. She gets irritated and asks if he is once again trying to mess with them. Our protagonist is sure that she is not pretending. He then looks to the side and calls for his dear wife, saying that now he can clearly see how wonderful she is. Fang Xiu says that he apparently doesn't want to cooperate but feels something strange. Something starts to distort and the wife says that finally he is seeing her. She turns her head back and calls for the humans. Ling Shu and the assistant then wonder what that is. The creature starts to grow and opens a macabre smile, saying it has been a long time since she tasted his spiritual master. The assistant is shocked and Fang Xiu asks what kind of power that is. Our boy says it's a little surprise for them. His wife is more mysterious than he imagined and apparently he is trapped in a puzzle. He asks if they can see her now, realizing that the fact he noticed her existence brought her into reality. If even his spiritual master couldn't see her, it means he must be the only one who can see all creatures. Ling Shi stretches out her hand and creates a purple energy, throwing it at the monster, telling it to die. Fang Xiu is impressed with the woman's spiritual power. Apparently, that must be the ability of a spiritual master. However, from the smoke, the wife emerges unscathed. The woman can't believe it and loses her nerve, already trying to flee, saying it's impossible for them to handle that. The wife simply extends her finger and cuts the air. With that, Ling Shui is disconnected and falls to the ground. Our boy is worse off than his friend and opens his clothes. Seeing that she has a fox tattoo on her inner thighs, he observes the assistant too finds a pink letter. He starts reading it while the wife asks why he isn't looking at her. He tries to discover as much as possible and in the next second is killed. He is back to the moment when he had just returned from school. He knows he can't do anything against his wife. However, tomorrow the investigation team will come, and that will be the time when the world discovers about the person who can see the future. He goes to the computer to access the forum he discovered by talking to the assistant. A message appears on the screen, and when he clicks it, a monster pops up, scaring him. However, he ignores it and keeps browsing the site. He's trying to find the truth about this bizarre world. Strangely, the wife turns the mouse. As he was researching very quickly, she asks him to be more gentle. Fang Xiu ignores all this and continues researching. He enters a link that requires him to pay $1 million. The wife asks if he wants help, while he wonders how he will get that amount. He glances at the main post that talks about someone who can manipulate time. If this existed, his value as someone who sees the future would decrease. The person says the ability is called Waste of Time and congratulates the protagonist for wasting his time reading it. Our boy wonders what kind of forum this is. Meanwhile, at a university, a girl in a pink shirt sneezes in front of her computer and wonders who is talking about her. Fang Xiu is trying to find classified information that only that investigator would have access to. The next day, he wakes up having spent the whole night researching more information about the bizarre events. Every time an event occurs, it is classified from rank S to rank D. A rank A plague could evaporate an entire city in one day, and a rank S event could destroy a nation. The problem is that the reason for these things and why they appear remains a mystery to everyone. However, these creatures are always around everyone, but each has its own condition for being materialized in reality. As always, the wife is saying good morning while he thinks that he didn't find anyone talking about seeing creatures in the sky. The goal now is to get money to extract as much knowledge from these forums as possible. Something he also discovered is about peculiar tools that have unimaginable functions, and the reason the scalpel is so strong is that it has been used for many sinister things. He remembers that one of the articles talked about connecting with the spiritual energy of a weapon. A blue aura begins to emerge and surround the room. Looking at the clock, he knows there are 3 hours left before the investigation team arrives. The energy enters his body and he finds himself being attacked by a bunch of creatures. His heart is crushed, but Fang Xiu just asks if this is all the despair they can cause. If that's the case, all this hatred will become the new tool. He then orders the spiritual energy of that weapon to kneel before the new king. He feels he has gained at least another 2% power, realizing that these items are not just tools but also serve to help him evolve. The problem is that his physical body still can't absorb much, so he will have to wait a bit. He goes to have breakfast and his friend calls. He answers, saying he knows his friend received a power for extracurricular activities. Zhao Hao is startled and asks if he used precognition to know that, saying it's good he knows that even though his power has been discovered, it's still much more incredible than seeing the future. Someone's earpiece drops to the ground. It's the investigator in the car, and Lingxi asks what the problem is. He says he discovered the abilities of the 2 guys. She tells him to spit it out because he seems very excited. He says that Zhao Ho's ability is quite peculiar. She questions if it's so shocking, and he says that Fang Xiu's is actually much more impressive. The boy apparently can see the future, warning that in the conversation, he already knows they are both going to visit him. He wonders how they already know they are coming. She is confused, thinking that even if something like this exists, it shouldn't be with a novice spiritualist. The assistant reminds her that the better the ability, the higher the cost to use it. She asked if he was using as an example the guy who could teleport but only 10 centimeters at a time. In that case, it's better to just walk. The assistant says that regardless, he has no idea how the boy knows they are coming. She opens the door, saying enough with the speculation. It's time to meet him in person. Face to face with him, she will judge if he really sees the future or is just making up stories. When they arrive in front of the room, the door is already open. They hesitate for a second, and she bursts in. Something catches their attention. Fang Xiu is calmly serving tea for the 3 of them. Without looking to the side, he calls out their names and tells them to sit down. Immediately, both enter the house. She sits on the sofa asking how he knows their names and also how he knew they were coming. Fang Xiu immediately says that it's because he can see the future with his eyes. She crosses her arms and tells him to prove it if it's true. Fang Xiu begins to talk about everything they came to do, from trying to find out what happened at the academy to also knowing about Zhao Ho's powers. The investigator says that all this can be discovered through logical deduction. Fang Xiu laughs and the guy asks if he got any information wrong. Our boy ignores him and questions if anyone else knows besides him that the investigator is in love with Lingxu and that right now he has a love letter in his left pocket. He puts his hand in his pocket and trembles while the women look confused. Fang Xiu says he will quote the letter, warning that it says, "Lingxu, when you are reading this, I will probably already be dead. However, there is something I have always wanted to tell you." The blonde interrupts the sentence and goes straight to the pocket to find it. She pulls out the letter and takes a look, getting scared because it says exactly what Fang Xiu said. After thinking for a bit, she says that's not enough because the letter was written in the past and not the future. He then says that she can control flames and has measurements of 85, 63, and 80. The wife who had turned into a cup asks when her measurements are. Lingxu feels a bit embarrassed and says that her power is not a secret in the spiritual community and that he might just be a prodigy in analyzing measurements. Our boy then says he knows a secret and asks if she really wants him to reveal it. She smiles, saying she is not afraid of anything he might expose. Our boy then says he knows very well that she has a certain obsession with the color pink. Everything good she has is covered in that color. Moreover, she also has a pink fox in a very interesting place. She immediately exudes an aura, saying that apparently his power is similar to his friends. Both are indecent. Fang Xiu makes up a story saying he doesn't know how everything happens. Last night he used his powers and saw the assistant writing the letter. And on the same night, he also saw her going into the closet to get dressed. She sits down embarrassed, thinking that he must have seen more than that since that tattoo is very close. She then says she will believe him if he can predict the lottery numbers, and immediately he writes them down. As he hands her the ticket, she knows this will be the perfect way to find out. However, she asks why he doesn't use this ticket and become a millionaire. He says it's because of the butterfly effect and how everything would spiral out of control. He makes a bet, saying that if the lottery number isn't correct, he could be killed. Lingxu is losing her mind with all the boy's arrogance. With that, the investigator asks him to comment on what happened at the academy. He remains silent and says that it was the Blue Mental Hospital. He had gone to the company's office when suddenly the entire place was engulfed by this illusion. Everyone in the office ended up being pulled into this so-called hospital. Obviously, Fang Xiu is going to lie. He doesn't mention many details or even the scalpel. He only says that at certain moments he saw the path where he and Zhao Hao would survive and where they would die. With that, he managed to escape dozens of anomalies. The investigator is startled, and Lingxi says she has never heard of a place with dozens of anomalies. Even though strange occurrences happen due to a dissonance, they never managed to act together. If he saw countless creatures, he probably encountered only one that manipulated them all. Fang Xiu says that apparently she doesn't have the experience to understand what he's talking about, but he adds that it's okay. Sometimes ignorance helps with survival. The poor woman is once again losing her temper with the boy's insults. However, the investigator tells her to calm down, explaining that it would be good if he returned with them today. Fang Xiu stands up and tells them to go quickly. An hour later, the car parks. They get out, and the assistant at the door says that this is the investigation office. Fang Xiu says this proves that almost no one can see the creatures since the path ahead of him is completely dark. At least in this place, he can discover how to leave a like on this video. Do you all remember how the last chapter ended just as Fang Xiu was staring into the darkness? Since he was the only one who could see that darkness, he was probably the only one who would see the monsters. Now he was anxious for this investigation office not to disappoint him. The trio then climbed the stairs and entered a room. He thought the building above the entrance was probably just a distraction since the real base was in the lower floors. A man walked by on his phone asking who it was, saying he wasn't interested in buying or renting houses or anything like that. At that moment, someone called Fang while the man walked away. There they saw an ordinary office like any other. A man stretched and accidentally bumped into a girl. This led to an argument, with her asking where he thought he was touching and him insisting it was an accident. Ignoring all of this, they went into a room where Fang Xiu sat down and said this place really felt lively. Ling Xiu just told him to stay put and asked Wenji to come with her because they needed to talk to the director. With that, the two closed the door, leaving him alone. He closed his eyes and a strange aura approached his body. Thanks to the supernatural powers and energy he had absorbed from that scalpel, his perception had improved. However, even with sharper senses, he couldn't detect anything unusual, which proved this place was extraordinary. He began following Ling Xiu's steps to figure out where the director's office was. Suddenly, the blonde turned around startled. Wenji asked what was wrong and if she was sensing anything strange. Our boy, sipping his coffee, realized she was much more perceptive than he had expected. In the office, the director asked if she was sure about this future scene business and who else knew about it. Fang Xiu confirmed it, saying the only other person who knew was his friend Zhao Hao. The director placed his cup on the table and said that a skill like this was extremely dangerous, so no information should leak. This guy seemed like the type who handed jobs to Peter Parker. He asked about the lottery numbers and Wenji handed them over. This was how our boy proved he could see the future, but the man didn't seem convinced, saying someone else might have told him. He told him to monitor today's lottery game to ensure it was 100% random and uninfluenced. He slammed his hand on the table and scratched his chin, saying he wanted to see just how capable this Fang Xiu really was. Then he turned to Ling Xiu, saying she was an experienced master. That's why he wanted to know if she thought the boy was lying. The competent detective said if this was lying, he was an excellent liar. Besides, predicting the future is easy to expose, so it would make sense for him to try deceiving anyone with it. However, she adjusted her hair, saying that personally, she was sure it was a lie. This was based on her intuition as a woman. The director wiped his hand and said whether it was true or not, they would soon find out. But what intrigued him was the boy's claim about numerous spirits being in the mental hospital. Ling Xiu said she believed that was impossible because if so many spirits really existed there, he wouldn't have left alive. As far as she knew, there were two entities in that place. One was the supernatural doctor who killed a person, consumed them, and only then moved again. The other was a creature capable of controlling dreams known as the Nightmare. The Bailu Academy was a fixed supernatural domain, and considering these two monsters, it was at most a rank C region. The director asked how frightening this creature's dreams were. Ling Xiu replied they only scared ordinary people. Even the boy Zhao Hao survived by watching some adult videos, so obviously spiritual masters wouldn't be affected. When you understand the creature's ability, surviving becomes easy, unlike with the supernatural doctor. The director said the explanations were enough, and it was time to meet the boy. However, Ling Xiu said it was too risky since they didn't know him well yet, and the boy might go out of control. She was about to suggest calling the captain and the commissioner, but he informed her they weren't available. Apparently, both had gone to hunt down the leader of a supernatural group. We then saw a man climbing stairs when another ran up behind him. These were the two men from the investigation team. Commissioner Bai Qi, the one with black hair, and Captain Yang Ming, obviously the other one. They were racing to see who would reach first. Ling Xiu said fine, but first she would conduct a mental contamination test on him to avoid any risks. The scene shifted to another room with a device on the table. She explained it was a lie detector based on spiritual fluctuations. If his heart and words didn't align, it would show a reaction. He placed his hand on the device and told her to go ahead with her questions. She asked him to imagine a supernatural creature massacring the entire city. You have to choose between fighting the creature and escaping alone or saving as many people as possible who could escape with him. He should answer honestly. He said he would choose the first option and fight the supernatural entity. The test showed he wasn't lying, and she wondered if he was really the type to risk himself for others. Obviously, our boy said that because if he dies the first time, he'll try again and again. One day, he'll find the weakness and the creature will die. Then she asked him to imagine a future where he received an invitation from a highly intelligent supernatural creature far stronger than any human ever existed. If he accepted the invitation, he would gain unimaginable power and authority. Fang Xiu immediately answered no. She was surprised and then asked what he would do if the creature offered protection to everyone he loved, including family and friends. Once again, he replied no. She then asked what he would do if his family joined the creatures, but he explained that he didn't have a family. She asked what he thought about friends since, as far as she knew, he was Zhao Ho's colleague. Fang Xiu said that if his so-called friend accepted the monster's invitation, he would no longer have a friend. She then said it was time for the third question. It seemed like many questions were asked, and he remained calm the whole time. Finally, she announced it was time for the last question and asked what he most wanted to do after becoming a spiritual master. He simply replied that he wanted to kill all the supernatural creatures in this world. Once again, she was surprised and lowered her head. She remarked that spiritual masters always have the darkest sides of humanity. In countless instances when she asked these questions, they always talked about killing creatures and gaining as much money, fame, and women as possible. Seeing our boy with such noble ideals, she was even moved to tears, wondering when someone so selfless toward humanity had appeared among the masters. If the system had malfunctioned, he was a kind of angel among them all. Even though he seemed arrogant and indifferent, deep down he genuinely cared about humans. While she checked to see if the device was broken, he was only thinking about the day he would avenge the woman 100-fold. He wanted to kill all supernatural creatures, but he knew that one wouldn't go down so easily. The scene then changed to a door opening as she led him to Director Wan. She handed over the document, stating that the boy had passed the test. The man introduced himself as Wang Dehai, the current director of the investigation group. He was about to ask the boy to sit, but Fang Xiu had already seated himself before being told. Fang Xiu gave a casual greeting, which annoyed Ling Su due to his lack of manners. Ignoring this, He decided to look at the test results and was immediately impressed. The answers were perfect, and he turned to her, asking if they were really true. She just nodded, making it clear. He commented that based on the boy's answers, he was perfect for this profession. Even if he didn't have the ability to see the future, he would still want him in the investigation group. He held up his hand, telling him there was no rush as they waited for the lottery results. Meanwhile, Fang Xiu thought he was only there to use this identity as someone who could see the future to gather resources for his goal. Dehai then asked about the limitations of his future-seeing ability, such as cooldown time or usage limits. Fang Xiu explained that in the supernatural world, he could walk between the future and the past. He could witness the lives and deaths of countless people and experience infinite possibilities. Ling Su, whom I confused with Fang Xiu from the other story, was irritated because he always gave these grandiose answers, acting so full of himself. At the moment, the boss was talking about how the commissioner and captain were the strongest when someone burst into the room, announcing something terrible had happened. Apparently, the investigation commissioner had died. The two stood up in shock while Fang wondered how strong a third-level person would be. It's a shame the man died before becoming useful to him. Someone commented that Bag Qi was the #1 spiritual master in this city. If someone like him really died, everything would fall into complete chaos. It seemed, however, that the man hadn't truly died yet. He was currently battling the headless supernatural creature, but he hadn't informed Captain Yang. Normally, if the two worked together, this wouldn't be a problem. But as he advanced, another mysterious entity was lurking nearby. In fact, he really did die because he attacked alone and was caught off guard by the other entity, with blood splattering everywhere. The director slammed the table, demanding to know what the investigation group was doing, being unaware of this other monster's presence. Someone explained they had investigated everything, but this creature appeared out of nowhere, as if it materialized in thin air. The chief sat down, asking where Yang Ming was, and the man replied that he was heading toward Qinbei City. He then covered his face and ordered them to take Fang Xiu to the rest area while telling Shang Lingsu to join him in the conference area. Fang Xiu stood up, motioning for the man to lead the way, who hesitated before complying. Walking through the hall, he overheard people discussing investigations in Qinbei City and something urgent. They mentioned 3,000 spiritual coins and even spiritual incense. He had heard of the incense being produced there, but had never seen it in person. Spiritual coins were a type of metal that could conduct spiritual energy and were used to forge weapons. Meanwhile, spiritual incense could suppress mental corruption. These were prestigious resources that allowed spiritual masters to control their mental states. Goodness, how many times have I said spirit and spiritual? Sitting in the room, Fang Xiu wondered how a master like that had died so easily. Not to mention he was attacked by only 2 creatures. He then recalls that the ghost doctor's skin was as tough as steel and normal weapons couldn't penetrate it. Watching the others argue, he thinks about how, in contrast, human skin is incredibly easy to cut. Even with spiritual powers, they were always at a disadvantage against those supernatural creatures. He then stands up and tells the man not to panic. As the man turns around to respond, he takes a blow to the back of his neck. Fang says that the ones at risk in this place are the spiritual masters, not him. Shortly after, the boy is already wearing a suit and looking very stylish. He remarks that it's time to use this chaos to gather some information. In the office, everyone is wondering how someone as strong as Bai Qi could have died. Fang walks through and hears others mention that Bai Qi seemed dissatisfied with the captain's selection. Someone else responds that it was inevitable since the current captain, Yang, has a very powerful luck ability. A girl adds that Bai was considered invincible, while Fang notes that having luck as an ability is quite unique and interesting. The blue-haired girl says that on the day of the competition for the captain's position, Bai Kai had a stomachache. Her friend questions why he didn't ask for a break, and she replies that someone as proud as Bai Ki would never do that. As a result, he was forced to fight even with diarrhea. Fang leaves, thinking that all the news here stinks, literally, and none of it is useful. At that moment, someone opens the door, announcing for everyone to gather in the conference room because Yang had arrived. Fang knows this is the perfect moment to get important information. In a large meeting room, the entire office gathers around a massive table. Standing discreetly in a corner, our boy wonders who's bold enough to smoke in a place like this. He looks to the side and sees a man in the corner who seems to be crying. He assumes this is Captain Yang, shaken by Bai's death. Then Captain Dahai speaks up, telling everyone to look at the screen, as it shows the new entity capable of hiding in the shadows. Bai Kai hadn't been able to detect his presence during the fight. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't escape his own shadow. As a result, he was gravely injured and finished off by the headless creature. Yang already killed that same creature, but the shadow entity managed to escape. The meeting's purpose is not only to address this incident, but also to avenge Bai Ki's death. At least amidst all this chaos, there's good news that Yang had advanced to the 3rd rank and is now one of the strongest spiritual masters. Fang knows this means the man has awakened 41% of his spiritual potential. He wonders what effect this will have on the man's luck ability. Yang rises from his seat, grabs his cigarette pack, and sees it's empty. He crushes the pack and turns around, asking if anyone has more. The director reminds him that the city's safety is now in his hands. Yang simply puts his hands in his pockets and says if that's the case, he'll go buy a pack himself. The director holds back his anger but slams the table, telling him to stay put and asking if he doesn't want to avenge Bai Kai. Yang pauses for a moment and asks why he would seek revenge. Would revenge bring him back to life? The director covers his face and tells him not to leave, handing him another pack of cigarettes. Yang sits back down, saying he should have given it to him earlier and noting that this brand is pretty good. Meanwhile, Fang observes, noticing how calm and rational the man appears, except for the fact that he smoked about 30 cigarettes in 10 minutes. Then someone opens the door and calls for the director. The man goes to complain until the other explains that the person he was supposed to watch over hit him on the head and stole his uniform. The director informs everyone that the culprit is a boy named Fang Xiu and places an alert on him. Everyone starts running while our boy is disappointed that the man ran off so quickly. Suddenly, someone calls out to him. It's Ling Shu, who says the bastard is right there. Immediately, everyone points their weapons at the boy. One of them even tells Captain Yang to stay back. The director asks if Fang doesn't realize it's a crime to attack someone from their organization and demands to know what he's planning. Fang completely ignores him. He crouches in front of Yang and asks if he'd like to bring Bai Ki back to life. Yang gets serious and warns him not to joke about it, or he'll end up dead. Our boy feels the pressure of the spiritual energy, but is used far worse. He then tells Yang to answer already, does he want to save Bai Ki or not? Meanwhile, everyone in the room keeps pointing their weapons at him. Yang tells him to stop talking nonsense and orders the others to arrest him immediately. But Yang suddenly tells everyone to stop. Perhaps he's losing his mind, but he feels like what the boy is saying is true. He asks if Fang can really bring Bai Ki back to life. Fang Xiu asks when Bai Ki died and how far away he was from him at the time. Yang explains that he followed a lead in the mountain region but was too late to return to the city. If he had been nearby at the time, perhaps Bai Ki wouldn't have died. Fang says he understands and then asks for Bai Ki's number and a secret. Yang asks why he needs this information if they're planning to bring Bai Ki back to life. Our boy reveals that he can't bring the dead back to life. Yang stares at him, and Fang adds that he has another solution. He can go back to the past and change the future. He realizes that since he's going back in time, no one will know what he revealed, so the secret remains a secret. In the room, everyone whispers that this sounds even more exaggerated than resurrecting the dead and says he must be lying. Yang even says that such an ability would be far too overpowered for a spiritual master. Our boy repeats his dramatic speech. I am from the spiritual realm. I navigate between the future and the past, experiencing countless realities. Ling Shu notices that this is his eccentric way of describing his own ability. Our boy then says he will return to the time before Bai Ki's death, call him, and reveal the secret to make him believe. There's no harm in trying since he's not risking anything. Yang ponders and says it really does make sense since he has nothing to lose. He gives Fang the number and says that Bai Ki will be able to receive the call because at the time he was in a place with cell service. Yang says that the secret is something only he and Bai Ki know, something he had planned to keep hidden for the rest of his life. He seems to force himself to reveal the secret. Finally, he admits that during the captain's selection, he gave Bai Ki a laxative to make him have a stomachache. Since he has the ability of luck, no one suspected anything, and everyone thought it was just a coincidence. The room falls silent, and no one can believe he played so dirty. Even the chief says he didn't expect someone so honest to stoop this low. Yang says it was all Bai Ki's fault and blames the rivalry between them. He stands up and says to forget about it since the man is already dead. Fang, however, simply says the secret is enough and tells Yang to wait for the call. Yang looks upset. The chief looks disappointed and Ling Shu watches attentively. After a long silence, Fang tells them to continue their meeting. Yang asks the obvious question, if Fang isn't going back to the past now to do what he said he would. But Fang questions when he ever said he would go back at this exact moment. The chief accuses Fang of lying and orders Yang to remove this strange boy from the room. Yang agrees and tells Fang to follow him. The scene shifts to the confinement room. Yang tells Fang that it's the director's orders, but not to stress about it. At this point, Yang believes Fang can say Bai Qi, so he doesn't want to offend him. Fang replies that he understands and asks Yang to explain more about the headless supernatural creature they fought. Yang lights his 100th cigarette and says that Bai Qi's ability was super speed. It was just unfortunate that this creature had the advantage in their fight. Time passes, many cigarettes burn out, and the two talk for a while. Eventually, someone opens the door. It's Lingshu saying that the lottery numbers Fang wrote down were all wrong and telling him to take a look. Yan crushes his cigarette and says Fang will pay for playing with Bai Qi's life. Fang glances at the paper and says now he knows the correct lottery numbers. But Lingxi says the cost of his mistake will be his life. Fang pulls out the scalpel and everyone is startled. Our boy tells them not to worry. He always keeps his word. The others prepare to draw their weapons, ordering him to stay still, but Fang strikes his own forehead. He says he'll see them earlier in the day. Time rewinds, a car screeches to a stop, and it's the exact moment he arrives at the office. This time, he writes the correct numbers and hands them to Lingxu. As they enter the building, he says that as soon as they turn the corner, there will be a man on the phone. Sure enough, the same man from before walks by, talking on his phone. Both of them are impressed that Fang has already started predicting everything. He walks ahead and says the man in the middle row will try to stretch and accidentally bump into a girl. Of course it happens. Lingshu looks back, watching the argument unfold. The other investigator seems to trust that Fang can see the future, but Lingxi says these are just reasonable deductions. However, Fang takes the lead and says he'll take them to the room. He opens a cabinet, grabs some tea, and serves it to the two of them. They wonder why the boy is doing everything they were supposed to do. A boy even adds sugar to both of their coffees. They ask if he's been there before, to which he replies no. It's just that his eyes see the future. Moreover, Director Wang is free now, so they should let him know. The scene shifts to a car speeding through a forest. It's Wan who receives a call and asks who it is. At that moment, Fang gives him the information that Bai Qi will die in 30 minutes. Yang slams on the brakes and demands an explanation, asking who is speaking. Fang Xiu says he's someone who can see the future and is now working with the association. He says something unexpected will happen in 30 minutes and Bai Qi will be killed by a supernatural entity. Yang tells him to stop joking about people's lives. At this moment, Fang reveals the secret about Yang giving Bai Qi a laxative. Shocked, Yang obviously wants to know how Fang knows this if he never told anyone. Fang ignores him and explains everything that will happen with a headless creature and a shadow entity. He ends the call, and Yang realizes it's far too risky not to trust him after this. Yang turns the car around and heads toward Kinbei City. Fang knows that now it's up to Yang to decide everything. Back at the office, Lingxu storms in, kicking the door open, saying it's time for the real truth or lie test. She's sure Fang has been calm so far but won't be able to lie in front of this device. However, Fang grabs it from her, places it on the table, and activates it, telling her to get started already. She sits down, and before she can even ask the first question, he answers that he would fight the supernatural entities. Before she understands what's happening, he already answers the second question, saying he wouldn't side with the entities either. Moreover, if his friend sided with the creatures, their friendship would end. He keeps talking, answering every question until for the last one. He says what he wants most is to kill all the supernatural creatures in this world. The girl hasn't even reacted yet. He simply stands up from the table and says the test is over, so it's time to be the director. She stays there, holding the device, wondering if it's broken or somehow malfunctioning. The scene shifts to the director's office, where he's saying it's hard to believe Fang's ability to predict the future. Fang simply says there are people who can't be measured by common sense, which is why it's impossible to understand him. The chief feels like punching the brat, but instead demands the test results. Moreover, the red email states it couldn't flag anything because Fang predicted every question and answered them correctly. On top of that, the lie detector didn't go off. Our boy starts realizing he'll need to invent some kind of weakness to make people believe his ability is legitimate. He then explains that every time he uses this ability, his mind is flooded with information, causing a spiritual overload. This makes it impossible for him to predict a distant future, and the reason he's using it so much today is to prove he has the ability and to get a spiritual incense. Considering that incense stabilizes spirits, the chief thinks this explanation makes a lot of sense. He then asks Fang what kind of salary he's expecting, pointing out that spiritual incense isn't expensive. Fang says he wants the salary of his second-level spiritual master plus an extra incense every month. Finally, every time they need his abilities, they'll have to pay a bonus. The director says he can agree to part of that, but thinks the bonus is too much. Fang leans back in his chair and says the director doesn't seem to understand the value of someone who can see the future. But he reassures him, saying he has already prepared a big gift for the place. Of course, Wang wants to know what this gift is while feeling an ominous sensation. Fang Xiu smiles and says today's gift is Bai Qi's life. Naturally, the director is startled, slamming the table and asking if Fang is threatening Bai Qi's life. Fang Xiu simply tells him to call Bai Qi right now. The chief glances at Ling Xiu, who approaches and places her hand on Fang's shoulder, but he remains confident, smiling. Just as Wang picks up the phone, someone opens the door. The chief goes to scold them, but it's Yang, asking if there's a Fang Xiu here. The chief looks confused, asking why Yang is back, where Bai Kai is, and what's going on. Yang says that's irrelevant. Bai Kai is in the hospital right now, and he wants to know where Fang Xiu is. Ling Xiu immediately points to Fang and asks what he did to Captain Bai. Fang feels relieved, realizing that Bai Qi being at the hospital means he's safe. The chief then says Fang Xiu is the boy standing there, claiming he brought a big gift for them. Yang smiles and says it really is an incredible gift. Ling Xiu removes her hand and Yang asks Fang if he's the one who called him. Yang hugs him, saying that if it weren't for that message, he would have lost his friend. The two baffled men in the room have no idea what's going on. Fang looks at the chief and asks if he's satisfied with the gift. He also tells Miss Shin Ling Xiu to stop using her ability on him. Ling Xiu wonders if it's really possible that just one call saved the life of the most important spiritual master in the city. Yang then says that if nothing was manipulated, he recognizes Fang's value and accepts his terms. However, they'll wait for the lottery results, and for now, Fang should be taken to another area. Yang hears this, seems to realize something, leans into Fang's ear and whispers that he'll meet him later. In another room, Fang is sitting with Ling Xiu. She's thinking that he not only predicted her habits, but also knew about her private tattoo. She feels exposed, as if she has no secrets left in front of him. What she wants to understand is why it always seems like he's staring at her neck. Fang, on the other hand, is thinking that she has a long, white neck, just like his wife. He knows the blood there is warm and wonders if his wife would also bleed like that. Considering she's a ghost, he thinks her blood might feel refreshing if it spilled on him. At that moment, someone opens the door. It's Yang, saying he wants to speak privately with Fang. Ling Xiu leaves the room, visibly flustered. Yang sits down and Fang watches him. Yang's expression suddenly changes and he asks if Fang hasn't told anyone about the laxative incident. Fang realizes the director is very cautious about his future-seeing ability, while Yang is only worried about his past misdeeds. Fang assures him that so far, no one else knows, but adds that it might change in the future. Yang asks what he means by that, and Fang replies that it means Yang might have to pay a little extra. Yang tells Fang Xiu that he needs to understand that here Yang is the captain, while Fang is just a rookie who just joined. Fang, however, simply responds that Yang should pay him 100 spiritual coins immediately if he doesn't want anyone to know about the incident. Yang starts to protest, but Fang raises the price to 200 coins on the spot. Yang demands to know why Fang is charging him so much, saying he only earns 10 spiritual coins and can't afford it. When Fang pretends to start revealing the secret, Yang quickly agrees to pay. Sometime later, they're all gathered in Wang's office again. Yang is slumped in the corner, begging Ling Xiu to lend him some spiritual coins. Fang realizes he might have gone too hard with his demands. Meanwhile, the lottery results are being announced on TV. As the numbers are revealed, everyone starts to gasp in shock. When the number 05 appears, it confirms that the numbers Fang had written were correct. Yang immediately hugs Fang, declaring them blood brothers and saying he only wants the numbers for the next lottery. The chief tells him to stop and reminds everyone that the boy's ability is meant to protect the city. He then tells Fang that this is a secret that must be kept absolutely confidential. From now on, they'll claim his ability is simply heightened intuition and nothing more. The chief officially invites Fang to join their organization. Of course, Fang accepts. Yang then asks how they'll report Fang's information to their superiors. The chief explains that Fang's name will be added to the global list of talents, but details about his ability will remain an absolute secret. Fang Xiu, now with an S-rank ability and the title of the Prophet, is smiling as he considers all the resources and money coming his way. He muses that soon his wife will have an amazing night. Yang remarks that it could be risky if more people find out of Fang's ability. He questions whether it's right to rank Fang as S-class so quickly, accusing the chief of favoritism. The chief insists that Fang's power is far too valuable to keep in the city. He'll need to transfer the headquarters to maximize his contributions. The chief then mentions that Zhao Hao, Fang's friend who also survived the same supernatural location, should join as well. The plan is to keep someone close to Fang Xiu at headquarters, ensuring he remains indebted to the organization. Ling Xiu, however, points out that Zhao Hao's prowess is primarily in certain intimate talents, which she deems too vulgar for this place. The chief seriously replies that it doesn't matter. He's sure such a skill will eventually prove useful. Fang simply says they can do whatever they want. However, he knows very well they want Zhao Hao as a bargaining chip to use against him. He then asks Yang to explain what happened during the incident with Bai Kai. Yang responds that there's no concrete evidence, but it seemed intentional. He explains that he's fought countless spiritual entities, but this one, despite being cloaked in shadows, felt like an anomaly. Moreover, fought like a human. Had he not managed to kill the headless demon and advance to the 3rd level, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Yang adds that the enemy seemed to be holding back because as soon as he advanced, the creature dissipated. He then pulls out a card he found at the scene. Seeing the Ace of Spades, Fang Xiu asks if it wasn't made of mental steel. And why would a supernatural entity use something like that? Wang Dahai remarks that it suggests a spiritual master is behind this, or at least a very powerful organization. This incident isn't simple, and they'll need to think carefully about it. The scene shifts to Fang's apartment, where his wife greets him, saying she missed him after his day at work. He looks at his new identification and tosses some coins onto the table. She praises him, saying her husband is amazing at earning money. Fang, however, is curious, knowing that each of these spiritual coins could sell for hundreds of millions. It's incredible that Captain Yang managed to get so many at once. This wasn't extortion, it was Yang's way of thanking him for not revealing his secret. Fang tosses a coin into the air, catches it mid-flight, and wonders how to use it for maximum benefit. At first, he considers making armor, but given his abilities, he decides that's not the best option. As for weapons, he already has the scalpel, so there's no urgent need for another. Besides, 200 coins aren't enough to craft a high-level sword. Considering his abilities, he doesn't need a weapon with overwhelming power. It just needs to be long, small, and sharp enough to deal damage to enemies. The scalpel is perfect, except that, as a cursed item, he can't flaunt it openly. Perhaps crafting another scalpel to disguise the existence of the first would be a good idea. With the remaining coins, he plans to purchase information on a supernatural forum. Suddenly, there's a knock at his door. If it were the investigation team, they would have messaged him. If it were Zhao Hao, he would have called. He approaches cautiously, uncertain about which entity might be looking for him. As he looks through the peephole, sweat starts to bead on his forehead. The giant eye stares back at him, and an overwhelming power seems to press down on him. Moments later, he's opening his eyes and shaking his head. The room reeks of rotting flesh. Bloody tools surround him, and he wonders where he is. Looking down, he sees chains. It's then he realizes he's sitting in a chair surrounded by a horde of creatures. In front of him was a grinder, and you could hear the sound of impacts nearby. A man was holding a screwdriver, hitting the wall ahead. Suddenly, the lunatic turned toward him, thanking him for finally waking up. All the creatures in the room turned to face Fang Xiu. He recognized the man from his red eyes. This was the person who stared him down right before he passed out. The strange man then remarked that Fang had woken up too quickly. It seemed the new spiritual master was a genius like him. He really got lucky because torturing geniuses was his favorite thing. Fang Xiu remained calm, analyzing that the man's ability was related to his eyes. He knew this man was a spiritual master, had a bizarre appearance, and referred to himself as a genius. Fang asked if the man was Wang Ziteng's cousin and questioned whether the machine was working properly. For those who don't remember, Wang Ziteng was the man from the earlier mission with the girl at the investigation office. The man was impressed. Fang recognized him and confirmed that yes, he was Wang Ziteng's cousin, Lin Ziyang. Lin Ziyang apologized for the machines being rusty since he hadn't killed anyone in a while. Fang Xiu calmly replied that Wang Ziteng had already mentioned he had a crazy cousin and told him to fix the machine quickly because he didn't like wasting time. Lin Ziyang seemed slightly unnerved but began laughing, saying Fang was truly fascinating. It was just a shame that soon he would die and join his cousin. Fang Xiu simply remarked that the man clearly had a serious problem, all while analyzing that Lin's chaotic and insane behavior matched the descriptions from the forums. Fang then taunted Lin Ziyang, saying the funniest part was how Wang Ziteng clung to his leg while dying. He had stepped on his hand, breaking each bone one by one. The sound of Wang Zi's screams while being killed was delightful. Lin Ziyang clenched his fists, muttering that Fang deserved to die. He promised that Fang would be killed slowly and then turned into food for stray dogs. But Fang Xiu replied that he wasn't afraid, as Lin was just a worthless person going through a spiritual breakdown. It was incredible how useless he was to have been corrupted by so little power. Lin Ziyang began cursing, muttering to himself that this wasn't how it was supposed to go. Fang Xiu had been on the floor, kneeling, crying, and begging for his life. Determined, Lin began fixing the machine, saying he couldn't wait to make Fang suffer. When Fang was reduced to nothing, he wanted to see if he'd still act so confident. Lin searched for the cruelest tool in his arsenal. Fang Xiu taunted him, saying he was so useless he didn't even know what tool to use. Lin turned and shouted for him to shut up, continuing his search. Clearly, he was more unhinged than ever. Finally, Lin selected a tool and declared it perfect for pulling out the teeth of someone who talks too much. He demanded Fang Xiu beg for forgiveness, but Fang only asked how Lin would prefer to die. Would he rather have his bones crushed by a hammer or be punched until nothing was left? Fang suggested Lin decide soon because when the time came, Fang wanted everything to go perfectly. Lin froze, unsure how to respond. Fang asked why he was hesitating and backing away so much. He warned Lin that he had a scalpel perfect for cutting someone into pieces. While he'd like to make at least 1,000 cuts, he admitted he wasn't skilled enough and guessed Lin would die before the 100th. For that, Fang said Lin might need to start apologizing. Lin Ziyang put his hands on his face, muttering that Fang was the true lunatic having a spiritual breakdown. He warned that in this place he controlled life and death and ordered Fang to stop threatening him. Fang Xiu simply replied that life was always in his hands. He then looked at a snake-like creature nearby and asked if it was hungry or wanted to eat someone. The creature seemed to glance at him, though it was hard to tell since its eye was also its mouth. Lin Ziyang asked whom Fang was talking to. Fang replied he was speaking to the entity that had taken Lin's life. The moment Lin Ziyang acknowledged the creature's existence, he froze as it appeared before him. Shocked, Lin stammered, asking where the thing had come from, calling Fang the real lunatic. Fang Xiu just smiled and said there were countless more where they came from. He greeted them all and invited them to appear. Lin Ziyang, already on the brink of madness, completely lost it, screaming that it was all an illusion and couldn't be real. Fang Xiu just laughed, and with that, another life reset. When he opened his eyes, he was back home with his wife, who was celebrating his return from work. He ignored her and collapsed onto the couch. The sensation of being eaten alive by countless supernatural creatures wasn't so bad. Another point toward his pain tolerance. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. He grabbed his scalpel while his wife asked if they were expecting visitors tonight. Fang only thought about giving someone the chance to experience a very painful death. At the door, he vowed to fulfill his promise. Peering through the peephole, Lin Ziyang could hear footsteps approaching. One glance would be enough to activate his ability. But instead, the scalpel shot through the door, piercing him directly. As soon as Lin Ziyang collapses to the ground, he mutters that it hurts and then passes out, apparently unable to withstand the pain. Fang Xiu opens the door, grabs Ziyang by the leg, and drags him into the house. He removes the scalpel from the door and checks if Ziyang is carrying anything suspicious. While Fang Xiu examines some documents, his wife asks who this person is that he's brought into their home. After finding some ordinary items, Fang discovers something that emits a faint supernatural aura, a bronze object resembling either a sword or a candelabra. He wonders if it might be a cursed artifact. Fang is impressed that Ziyang possesses something so powerful, though it's still not on par with his scalpel. Given how easily Ziyang was subdued with a single strike, Fang concludes that he's likely not a level 2 yet. Looking through Ziyang's phone, Fang sees that he's part of an organization called the Light Club. It seems this group of low-level spiritual masters seeks spiritual incense to stay calm. Fang notices a delivery order for a warehouse, suspecting that in a previous timeline when Ziyang went to make the delivery, he was killed. After jotting down the warehouse address, Fang remarks that now the roles are reversed. It's time to show what real cruelty looks like. He hoists Ziyang onto his shoulder and leaves the house. A short while later, Ziyang wakes up, disoriented and unsure of where he is. His eye is bleeding and he questions what happened. That's when he realizes he's in the same warehouse. The problem is that this time he's the one tied up. He hears a familiar mechanical sound, the same one he always makes when torturing others. To his side, Fang Xiu comments that Ziyang took his time waking up but did so at just the right moment. Fang presses a button and the machine starts, now repaired. Ziyang demands to know who Fang is. Fang asks how Ziyang doesn't recognize him when he knocked on Fang's door late at night. Ziyang screams Fang Xiu's name and Fang congratulates him for remembering. Walking closer, Fang says it's time for the 1,000 cuts. He explains that he left Ziyang's eyes intact because he wanted him to see everything that happens. As Fang said before, their lives were always in his hands. Ziyang asks what Fang wants and why he's doing this. He insists they've never met and claims he only went to the apartment to invite Fang to join the Light Club. Fang Xiu dismisses this, saying Ziyang is wrong. This is about avenging his cousin, Wang Ziteng. Ziyang panics, unable to understand how his identity was exposed or how Fang knows about his revenge plan. Ziyang tries to justify his cousin's death, claiming Wang Ziteng wasn't a good person, so it doesn't matter that he's gone. But Fang Xiu coldly replies that it's too late for that. Family must stay together. If one cousin dies, the other must follow. With that, the promise begins and Ziyang is about to meet his end. Terrified, Ziyang screams that it hurts, wondering if his body is being torn apart. In reality, there's only a small cut on his chest. He turns to ask why such a tiny wound hurts so much and what kind of blade Fang is using. But then he starts screaming again as the 1,000 cuts truly begin. Time passes and Ziyang is soon begging for death. Fang Xiu remarks that Ziyang's spiritual energy has finally calmed down. He promises to grant Ziyang the quick death if he answers one question. What is that bronze candelabra and how is it used? Ziyang explains that it can repel supernatural attacks. By injecting spiritual energy and fresh blood into it, the user can defend against any attacks within its range. However, the stronger the attacking creature, the faster the blood is consumed. Fang Xiu then asks how much spiritual energy Ziyang has awakened and why he lost control. Ziyang admits he awakened 20% but lost control while attempting to advance to level 2. The failure locked his body's evolution while his mind became increasingly polluted by spirits. Fang Xiu continues interrogating, demanding information about the Light Club, its members, their abilities, and everything else. Ziyang complies, revealing that the leader of the organization is a second-level spiritual master. 30 minutes later, Ziyang insists he's told Fang everything he knows and begs to be killed. Fang Xiu thanks him for the answers but adds it's a shame they're still far from reaching the 1,000th cut. Desperate, Ziyang screams that Fang is a shameless liar. Fang simply tells him to enjoy the pain. Ziyang screams to the heavens, swearing vengeance and cursing Fang repeatedly. But then suddenly he stops. Fang Xiu notices the silence and asks why the screams have ended. Blue bubbles begin rising from Ziyang's body, traveling toward his head and into his eye. Spiritual energy surges through his body and Fang wonders if this is a complete loss of control. Ziyang appears to be undergoing a mutation. Unsure of what's happening, Fang decides to disable Ziyang's ability to move. He cuts off his limbs and the stumps fall to the floor. Ziyang flinches in shock, lowering his head. Fang Xiu questions whether he successfully interrupted the mutation or was simply too harsh. That's when he hears a strange sound coming from Ziyang's body. Approaching cautiously, he sees the cursed eye emerging from Ziyang's face. Startled, he watches as the entity moves across Ziyang's head. Dark energy fills the room as the creature rises, looking around. Oddly enough, Fang Xiu smiles, saying, "This is quite interesting." The demon locks eyes with Fang and seems to attempt activating its power. Objects fly toward Fang Xiu. He quickly draws his scalpel and slices them midair. The creature, however, dodges and begins climbing up his arm. Rapidly, it ascends toward his face, heading straight for his eyes. Just before it reaches them, he grabs it, preventing it from taking over. However, due to its proximity to his eye, he becomes partially affected. His grip weakens, and the creature leaps onto his head. In that instant, his vision goes dark. The eye that had been staring at the creature seemed to be consumed, leaving a sinister mark on his face. Fang Xiu desperately tries to pull the creature off by its tail, but it slips away. Persistent, he digs at it with his fingers, but the parasite, now entrenched in his eye, begins interacting with his brain. The creature starts linking itself to his body. Fang Xiu's vision returns, though everything on one side is blood red. It's clear that his eye is completely overtaken by the entity. His eye twitches, rolling uncontrollably, as a voice echoes in his mind, speaking of the King of Spades and the frailty of flesh, hinting at supernatural ascension. The creature declares its intention to seize control of Fang Xiu's body, imprison his consciousness, and trap him in an eternal loop of pain. Fang Xiu laughs and asks if they really think they can make him feel pain, boasting that his tolerance far exceeds that of the creature. The monster threatens that once it takes control, it will devour everyone Fang Xiu loves. But suddenly, the creature finds itself in darkness, confused about where it is. As it sifts through Fang Xiu's memories, it becomes certain this is no ordinary human mind. Fang Xiu's voice echoes, asking the creature if that's all the pain it can handle. He promises to show it the true meaning of suffering. Desperate, the monster attempts to flee, pleading to avoid whatever torment awaits. Then something shatters. Fang Xiu proclaims that with Lin Ziyang's death, he is now the master of the blood pupil. The ability of this cursed eye is to cause a spiritual shock when someone looks into it, creating mental pollution capable of killing unprepared individuals. Additionally, it can induce hallucinations through direct eye contact. Fang Xiu feels a sharp pain in his chest and realizes his spiritual energy has dropped to 5%. Absorbing the blood pupil also absorbed all the energy it possessed. If this is possible, it means he can continue killing supernatural entities and grow stronger over time. The question now is how exactly he consumed the energy. This time was easy since the energy abandoned Lin Ziyang's body and tried to enter Fang's mind. But such opportunities may not arise in the future. Fang Xiu recalls the creature's mention of the suit of spades and wonders if this was part of a larger scheme. The grinder hums and Lin Ziyang takes his final trip. Fang Xiu mutters that he doesn't know exactly who Lin was, but he'll thank him in the next life. He truly fed him to the dogs. Fang considers that the president of the Light Club will likely send someone to retrieve the bronze candelabra. Human relationships are odd. Just because he killed one person, now he'll have to deal with their entire clan. A business card in Lin Ziyang's coat mentions the Black Rose Bar. For now, Fang decides it's time to establish connections before tackling the entire organization. Quick as ever, he's soon at the bar, stepping inside. Scanning the room, he spots several locked characters, including one with green hair and another sipping juice who glares at him. The bartender welcomes him and asks what he'd like to order. Fang Xiu replies that he'd like a black rose with 24 petals. The bartender pauses mid-cleaning, apologizing and saying they don't serve that drink here. Fang calmly clarifies that he's not asking for the drink. He's asking for the flower. The bartender's expression shifts and he asks Fang to follow him. Pressing a button, a door opens, and the man instructs Fang to follow the path where someone will receive him. As Fang Xiu walks down the corridor, he thinks they've hidden themselves well. Turning a corner, he encounters two guards at a door. These people are far more cautious than the investigation office. One of the guards stops him, asking for his membership card and warning that any conflict is strictly prohibited inside. After patting him down, they accept Lin Ziyang's card and grant him access, wishing him a good night. Passing through the door, Fang feels a strange sensation. Opening his eyes, he finds himself in a grand hall filled with numerous people. Considering there are fewer than 100 spiritual masters in the entire city, having even a dozen in one place is impressive. A striking woman approaches, asking what he desires for the night. Without hesitation, Fang Xiu states that he wants to kill someone. The scene shifts to a private room with just the two of them. Fang asks how much it would cost to assassinate the president of the Light Club. The woman explains that as the leader of a powerful group and a second-level spiritual master, significant resources would be required. Fang presses for a price and she reveals that for someone of that level, they don't accept money, only spiritual coins or high-value spiritual materials. She estimates the cost at a minimum of 5,000 coins. Fang begins questioning her about various members of the Light Club. Tan Guanyuan would cost 1,000 spiritual coins, while Lai Zhuwei would only cost 200. Confused, Fang Xiu asked why it was so cheap to kill Lai Zhuwei. The woman said that information on such matters also came at a cost. Fang slammed his hand on the table, demanding she explain immediately. Apparently, in slamming the table, he had inadvertently placed some coins on it. She sighed and said fine. The reason Xiaowei was so cheap to kill was because his abilities were limited to perception and his combat power was low. However, the reason information about him was so expensive was that he was the president's cousin. Fang was astonished by how often cousins seemed to pop up. The woman asked if he was planning to cancel the order or actually proceed. Fang replied that he loved starting with the cousins and asked when the operation would begin and what would happen if they failed. She explained that the operation would begin in a week and he would need to install an app called Already Dead to receive confirmation when the target was killed. Suddenly, messages popped up on her phone. She apologized, saying she was swamped with other tasks. If the assassination failed, Fang could either get half his money back or pay a higher price for a stronger assassin. She handed him a contract, assuring him that everything was guaranteed. When he placed his hand on the paper, he felt the energy of a supernatural artifact. She praised his sharpness, explaining that the artifact ensured they could find someone if they failed to pay the remaining balance. Realizing that signing with a fake name wouldn't make a difference, Fang completed the contract. The woman thanked him for his business and said she looked forward to working with him again. Fang walked out of the establishment, clutching his eye and muttering that everything was on track. 200 spiritual coins were a fair price to eliminate a light club member. The next day, Zhao Hao learned that Fang Xiu had joined the investigation office. In the director's office, someone mentioned turbulent temples and collaborations with spiritual masters from other areas. Wang Dahai informed Fang that for now, he would continue training with their team. Zhao Hao commented that it was good news Fang wouldn't be transferred yet. Yang chimed in, saying they were brothers at heart and that Fang should message him if he ever needed anything. The director then turned to Yang, asking about the investigation into the Ace of Spades and Bai Qi's condition. Yang explained that the Ace of Spades organization was part of a massive group known as the Poker Club. He added that Bai Qi was mentally recovering but still couldn't move properly. The director thanked him and instructed both boys to complete their beginner training before officially starting work. Zhao Hao happily agreed. Meanwhile, Fang Xiu was impressed by the scale of the organization. Theoretical training began with the woman teaching proper methods of approach. Zhao Hao, however, had a glazed-over expression, clearly distracted. Later, during practical training, Zhao Hao stood with a fruit on his head, begging for mercy. Fang Xiu, wielding his stick, expertly shattered the fruit. A week passed, and Fang completed his firearms training. Bored by the lack of supernatural entities, he checked his phone to see if the assassination request had been fulfilled. The app notified him that the order was complete, and he opened it for details. The scene shifted to a building in the middle of the city. Around a table, someone mentioned Lin Ziyang's name and the bronze candelabra. They also brought up Zhao, slamming a glass on the floor in frustration, demanding to know who was targeting them. It was clear that the light club was under attack. Woon approached, asking the angry young Master Mei to calm down. Sitting on his lap, she reassured him that he shouldn't stress so much. Master Mei took a sip of wine but paused, detecting a peculiar smell. The woman made a hand gesture indicating she had been working. Realizing what she meant, he angrily asked how she dared touch him with a mouth that had just worked so much. She laughed, telling him not to be angry, insisting she only played with others but kept him in her heart. Clearly, Master Mei was the cuckold of the association. The woman promised to solve all of his problems within a week. The scene shifted to the hospital where Bai Qi was recovering. He mentioned regaining most of his mobility but still being unfit for combat. On a video call with the director, Bai Qi was told to rest, with his missions assigned to another group in the meantime. The group's objective was to eliminate the hospital's supernatural creatures. Yang recommended that Fang Xiu join the mission, given his prior experience there. The director disagreed, stating that Fang's power was too important to risk on a rank C mission. Yang countered, claiming there wasn't much difference between rank C and rank E missions. The director retorted that such a distinction only held true for third-level spiritual masters. For most, the difference was life or death. He insisted they remain cautious, especially with the poker club's emergence and Bai Qi still hospitalized. The poor Bai Qi, still recovering in the hospital, comments bitterly that with Yang's absurd luck ability, everyone else will die before anything happens to him. Yang responds defiantly, saying a real man faces challenges head-on, isn't afraid to die. Bai Qi facepalms while the director instructs someone to call Fang Xiu. Face-to-face with the boy, the director informs Fang that he has a very important mission for him. Fang, however, states flatly that he won't accept anything unrelated to supernatural matters. The director then explains that the mission involves investigating a supernatural incident in Blackwater Village. Fang takes the file, remarking that he's never heard of the village. The director explains that it's a remote location in the mountainous region. Due to the difficult terrain, it receives very few visitors. The village is named after a black river that runs through it. The incident involves a string of recent drownings. Initially, these were believed to be isolated events, but villagers now claim there's an entity that grabs people by the feet and pulls them under the river. More recently, something even worse has been happening. People are reportedly sleeping peacefully at home, only to wake up by the river being dragged into the water. After investigations, the entity in the area has been named the Water Spirit, with an initial evaluation of rank C. Fang Xiu finds this quite interesting. The association pays 10 spiritual coins for resolving rank D missions and 100 for rank C missions. With this arrangement of receiving double, this would be enough to buy another hit on a light club member. The director emphasizes that Fang's identity must remain absolutely confidential during this mission. That's why Lingxiu will lead the team. Fang nods, thanking him and saying he understands, all while thinking that he misses using his scalpel. Recently, he's been trying to take revenge on his wife repeatedly. However, she's far stronger than him, resetting the timeline each time, which has taken all the fun out of it. The director, noticing Fang's unusually strong killing intent, wonders why the young man suddenly seems so bloodthirsty. He then informs Fang that, in addition to Lingxiu, he'll also have a partner for the mission, just as Lingxiu has Wanhao by her side. The director picks up the phone and calls someone named Kexen, telling them to come in. Fang Xiu hears approaching footsteps. Outside the door, someone mutters to themselves, "I can do this." She takes a deep breath and abruptly opens the door. The person entering is Su Kexen, Fang's newly assigned assistant. She greets the director cheerfully. The director introduces Fang to her, explaining that she's there to assist him with his work. However, Fang Xiu isn't naive. He knows she underwent spiritual master training before arriving here. This means when she muttered those words outside the door, she intended for him to hear them, knowing his heightened senses would pick them up. Su Kexen bows politely, introduces herself by name, and mentions that her code number is 1327. Fang Xiu walks past her, telling her not to text unless it's something important and to avoid pointless chatter. Kexen is startled by his reaction, but he simply walks out the door, saying she performed well, but it would be better to tone it down next time. Now I don't know if she's confused about being exposed or thinking he's just crazy. Outside, he receives the friend request and notices she really looks like an average cute girl. However, for her to be in this profession, she was definitely far from that. She sends a message trying to explain there was some misunderstanding, but just then, someone calls him from the side. It's Lingxiu, casually dressed, looking at the girl and telling him to hurry up. In the car, a chubby guy in an orange jacket introduces himself. He's investigator Liu Shui, and his special ability as a spiritual master is teleportation. Zhao Ho gets emotional and says he never thought he'd meet someone with a better ability than his. Shui asks what his ability is, and Zhao Hao feels embarrassed to answer. From the rearview mirror, Lingxiu tells him not to be shy and to just explain his complicated ability. She then says that as the leader, she'll introduce everyone first. She's Fang Xiu with the fire ability, and Shui already introduced his teleportation ability. Zhao Hao is embarrassed to share his ability because it involves something sexual. The chubby guy laughs, saying he's never met a brother with such a power. He jokes about what kind of combat he'd engage in against supernatural creatures. But the chubby guy stops laughing when Lingxiu says his ability to teleport 10 centimeters per hour is also garbage. Zhao Hao adds that 10 centimeters isn't even the size of the combat tool he uses. The chubby guy retorts, saying nowadays he's evolved to 20 centimeters every half hour. While they're bickering, Lingxiu loses her temper. She creates a fiery explosion, leaving both of them singed, warning that the next person to open their mouth will be thrown into the river when they reach the mission site. Immediately, they apologize and stay quiet. Fang Xiu finds it odd that for a rank C incident, they sent one combatant and 3 others who aren't much help. Either the mission is simpler than he realizes, or the investigation office is short on personnel. For now, he decides not to dwell on it, as everything will become clear once they reach the village. A while later, the car breaks, and they finally arrive at the Blackwater village. Everyone gets out of the car and looks at the village nestled in the forest. Amid a dense black fog, a few moving lights are visible. Fang Xiu notes that there are people ahead of them. Suddenly, someone approaches. An old man holding a lantern asks if she's Miss Chen from the TV station. She says yes and recognizes him as the village head, Wang Yuji. Yuji introduces his grandson Fuji and tells them to come along since they must be tired from the journey. Fang Xiu says he's not hungry, so Yuji offers to prepare some water for them to take a bath. The scene shifts to Lingxiu taking a bath, and there's a small mark on her leg that's hard to discern. However, she seems alert about something. She mutters to herself that she'll have to be cautious here at all times. She steps out of the bath and asks if anyone noticed something unusual. The group sits at the table, and Shui says no. She then tells them to stay alert, as they'll investigate the Black River in the morning. A supernatural force plaguing this place will be found there. But Fang Xiu suddenly utters the word hair. Lynx returns to him, confused, and he explains that everyone's hair quality here is unusually good, especially the chief, who must be in his 80s and yet doesn't have a single white strand. Shula jokes that the man must be dyeing his hair, but Fang Xiu says he doesn't think that's the case. Lingxiu pauses for a moment and admits that Fang Xiu has a point. In a village where everyone has known each other for so long, an elderly man like that wouldn't feel the need to dye his hair. Moreover, he'd have to travel several cities away to do it, which doesn't make sense. She instructs the 3 of them to sleep in the same room and keep watch. Suddenly, Fang Xiu stands up. Zhao Hao asks what he'll do if he encounters a supernatural creature, but Fang Xiu doesn't answer and just walks out. Outside, he reflects that the problem with staying together is that he won't encounter any supernatural creatures. At this moment, he wants to make it as easy as possible for them to appear. And at this moment, there's something crucial that no one has noticed yet. He looks around everywhere and at the sky, but there isn't a single supernatural creature in the area. Lying in bed later, he remarks that this is the first time he's encountered such a situation since the hospital domain. In that instance, the connection between the supernatural and real world caused the creatures to assume physical forms. Perhaps the village is under something similar and the physical creatures haven't appeared yet. One difference, however, is that his phone still has a signal. The night begins to pass. A dark energy then approaches the bed and his feet. In an instant, he seems to be engulfed in darkness. He feels an intense cold and wonders why he's hearing the sound of water. Suddenly, he wakes up startled and turns around, wondering if the creature has appeared. He looks around and sees darkness everywhere. The bed is shaking, and there's the sound of water. Then he grabs his phone and, turning on the flashlight, sees that he is in the river. And of course, it's the Blackwater River. The scene shifts to Ling Xiu being hit by a strong flash of light. She wakes up, stands, and asks who is approaching. A voice says it's him. It's our boy with his phone, flashing light at her. She asks when he entered the room and what he plans to do that night. He simply tells her to look around before jumping to conclusions. Everyone's beds are in the river and are still sleeping peacefully. She asks where they are and what happened. At that moment, Zhao Hao wakes up, wanting to know what's going on. Suddenly, someone grabs him from the side. It's Shuai, terrified, asking why they ended up in the river. Zhao Hao just yells for someone to get the crazy chubby guy off his neck. Fang Xiu explains that this is the supernatural river where the incidents are happening. Strangely, they are being drawn toward the center at that moment. The two cling to each other, saying there's a cyclone in the middle of the lake, pulling everyone in. Seeing their reaction, Ling Xiu face-bombs. She orders them to stop talking nonsense and use their hands to paddle away from the center. However, Fang Xiu knows this isn't normal. A creature capable of teleporting so many people into the river wouldn't let them escape so easily. Shuai tries to paddle, but soon realizes something is off. He says it's not working. No matter how hard he tries, they're not moving. Zhao Hao suggests swimming, but Ling Xiu warns that the river is the creature's zone of control. That's the one thing they absolutely shouldn't do. Moreover, as the team's best fighter, her fire ability is useless against a water-based enemy. This means at best she can only defend herself right now. Zhao Hao then asks Fang Xiu what they're going to do since the whirlpool is pulling harder. That's when he notices something strange and asks what Fang Xiu is doing. Our protagonist has a suitcase full of tools. He ties a rope to an end, stands, and begins swinging it. He prepares a throw and launches it, hitting a tree ahead. The rope secures and he tells everyone to get closer and grab his bed. The mattresses drift together and soon, everyone is holding onto the rope. He starts pulling them all in. Ling Xiu is impressed by how calm he is and the excellent decisions he's making. Gradually, they approach the shore and Zhao Hao cheers, praising Fang Xiu's cleverness. However, Ling Xiu looks back and notices the whirlpool has vanished. Everyone turns to see that the water is now still. Fang Xiu knows the whirlpool marked where the supernatural creature was located. Either it let them escape or there's another reason. He warns everyone that they'll be attacked soon. Zhao Hao is startled and everyone feels a tremor as Ling Xiu suddenly falls onto her bed. She warns that the creature is pulling her mattress. She grabs her phone and moves closer to investigate. Fang Xiu follows her to take a look. In the water, there seem to be shadows, but they might just be part of the vegetation. Suddenly, her expression changes and she unleashes a fire attack toward the lake. That's where the Blackwater River begins flooding her bed. She knows she can't cause damage, but at least she can prevent the creature from dragging them underwater. Suddenly, the mattresses flip and everyone is thrown into the water. Shuai clings to Zhao Hao, both terrified, saying they're being pulled. But Fang Xiu swiftly delivers a blow to Shuai's neck. Shuai passes out and Zhao Hao even thanks him. A while later, Shuai is tied to the rope while everyone pulls themselves out of the lake. Zhao Hao wonders if they're even heading to the shore, while Fang Xiu ponders why they weren't attacked despite falling into the water. Suddenly, Fang Xiu pauses and looks back. Ling Xiu seems healthier and more radiant by the day. Whoa, buddy, even she notices your stares. Take it easy. She awkwardly asks what everyone is looking at. Fang Xiu simply tells her to ignite the fire already. The water creature is afraid of her power, so she needs to burn through all her energy to force it to appear. Confused, she asks what they'll do once her energy runs out and the creature shows up, considering no one has combat abilities. He reassures her not to worry. He has a way to handle it. Still unsure, she activates her power. Zhao Hao cheers, joking that now the water feels like a hot spring. After some time, she says she can't continue, having exhausted her spiritual energy. Fang Xiu knows the time has come. He hears noises behind him. Zhao Hao alerts them that something supernatural is in the lake this time. Fang Xiu looks and sees several green strands approaching. The strange energy is also surrounding Ling Xiu, who asks what they're going to do. The protagonist smiles, seemingly pleased. Suddenly, he dives into the lake, activates his vision ability, and begins swimming. He soon discovers that what's pulling everyone is hair. Apparently, this matches what he noticed about the villagers. Suddenly, the strands begin wrapping around his arms and body. However, with a simple strike from his hand, the creature disperses. This is the kind of creature he despises the most, one that attacks and then tries to flee. Then he keeps swimming toward the bottom of the lake, pulling out his scalpel as he senses the presence of a monster. Hidden beneath a mass of hair was a woman in a white outfit, her face monstrous and grotesque. He continues cutting through the hair with his scalpel, negating her attacks using his ability. The problem is he's running out of air. He can't surface because she blocked him, so he has to end this here and now. Suddenly, she grabs his neck with hands that feel like they're made of steel. She's choking him, which only makes the situation more intense for him. He counters with another strike, forcing her to feel the pain. As he grins, another creature emerges, a grotesque, goblin-like monstrosity resembling a warped pig. Twisted and bizarre, it demands that he stop. He finds it strange that after only 2 simple attacks, she's already begging for mercy. Perhaps water monsters are particularly fragile, but then the hair tears the woman's head from her body and swims away through the lake. That's when he realizes the body wasn't part of the supernatural entity. He surfaces to catch his breath, informing the others that unfortunately, the creature escaped, and they should all head to the shore. Everyone gets out of the river, dragging Shuai along with them. Ling Shu mentions someone will have to perform CPR and asks which of the two will do it. Zhao Hao suggests she do it since she's a woman. Fang Xiu steps forward instead. She blushes and asks if he's really not going to hesitate at all. In response, he slaps Shuai on the face, making him immediately spit out water. A strange energy invades Shuai's chest, and he suddenly wakes up in a panic, demanding to know who hit him. Zhao Hao jokes that Shuai was faking unconsciousness just to get a kiss from investigator Shen. Fang Xiu calmly states there was a corpse underwater, and that the supernatural entity was the hair attached to it. Additionally, the village chief's hair is identical to that of the creature, so they can't return to the village tonight. Fang Xiu mentions the woman's corpse and says that if he alone could fend off the creature, it can definitely be defeated once it recovers. He then calls his assistant, So Kexen. When she answers, she asks why he's calling so late. He simply tells her to notify headquarters to send a special operations team with a lot of water pumps to this location. She's confused and asks if this is about the mission and why he needs that. He responds that she doesn't need to know why, just inform De Hai that it's his request. He then explains to the group that with water pumps, it'll be easy. The river is wide, but only this section has black water, so they just need to block the flow before it reaches this area. Once dry, dealing with the monster will be straightforward. The three seem skeptical, but admit the plan makes sense. Ling Shui agrees, noting that in an era where spiritual masters are rarer than money, this might indeed be the easiest approach. Fang Xiu, however, doesn't care about the easiest or hardest way. If he can make the supernatural creature suffer, he's satisfied. The next morning, outside the village, the campfire burns out and someone announces that the operations team has arrived. Everyone gets up and Fang Xiu, already wearing sunglasses, declares it's time to head to Black Lake. As they pass through the village, locals working in the fields wonder if the group is from the city. The women admire Ling Shu, commenting on her beautiful clothes and shiny hair. She blushes, unsure how to respond. Meanwhile, the men observe the villagers' hair, noting that it's just as flawless as the chief's. The operations team has blocked off the area and is setting up water pumps. They begin draining the river, warning Fang Xiu to stay back as it's no place for tourists. But he steps forward, showing his credentials. An armed officer informs him of the situation, but a white-haired woman questions whether he's the team leader and what he's doing to the river. Ignoring her, he steps past the barricade and orders the others to clear out. The two are escorted away by someone explaining they're just tourists trying to enjoy Black River. Fang Xiu ignores the comments, asking if everything is ready. The officer confirms, and he orders them to begin draining the river. The water pumps quickly dry out the river, and Fang Xiu marvels at their efficiency. He muses that if conventional weapons weren't so useless